Hello, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me okay in the on your end. Good morning, good night, wherever you are. Uh, and today, it's been pretty exciting news. Now, IGN actually, in my time, this was last night, they put out a video, an exclusive video for the Steam Deck PC portable system, which is going to be released in December 2021 in Canada, US, UK, and I believe Europe. I don't think Australia and New Zealand are included, but they're going to release that in those regions, obviously, because smaller numbers of this will probably be made, and they want to get those people in those regions a handheld and not have to worry too much about numbers. Like the worst thing really is like if you have a system and you do a worldwide release and then you can't actually get your system everywhere, and then that means it's just going to be scalped more easily. I mean, this thing is going to be scalped anyways, but yeah, it's better that they have a smaller worldwide release if they're not going to make so many of these. And so I think they're just going to test the waters out a little bit. They're going to make it's not going to be in high demand or high supply like the Nintendo Switch. They're going to make 20 million units of this. They'll have some units available, and they're just going to watch it as they go. But it's going to be $399. Starts shipping December 2021. And it's going to be in those regions that I just mentioned. And we'll get all into that in a second. But a lot of people have started making videos about this already. And I didn't really want to limit myself to about 10 minutes worth of discussion, which is what usually happens if you make a very small video. A lot of people who want to find out more about the system, they tend to click on the video that has the least amount of time. So that's why I decided to make a longer video, because then I can talk about everything that I want to talk about, and I'm sure you guys have questions about it as well, and we can talk about that. Have a bit of a discussion here in the chat. So make sure you put all your questions in the comments. There's some people in the chat already. So hello everybody. Confirmed SK said they really had to target Christmas, and yes, this is what companies do these days. Everything just gets released at Christmas. And they're not too worried about logistics and trying to get it all at the same time. This is really when people open their wallets. Like, people need a reason to spend money. Maybe people have saved up for the entire year, and now everybody's like, okay, we're all going to fight, because at that point in time, everybody's just going to open their wallets. So this is why companies release products at Christmas time. And also, by the way, if you can't get a Nintendo Switch for whatever reason, and obviously these two aren't really competing products, but if you can't get something else, then maybe you'd want to get something like this. So you're just gonna have to bear with me for 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So where was I? Yeah, like if you can't get something else, you'll probably want to you can always go for an alternative. So everybody's kind of like, if you can't get an Xbox Series X, maybe you'd get something like this, for example. So in the chat, Steam underestimates how ridiculous popular this will be. So yes, because it's got a name brand there, so I'm sure it's going to sell more than, say, like an Neo, or say, what was the other one? GPD Win. So it'll definitely have more interest than those systems for sure, because of the brand name. And even IGN got an exclusive hand, so they're kind of like almost endorsing it in a way. They didn't outright say, because it's a preview and they didn't really give their full comments on it or whether they like the system or not. But it's almost like it's kind of a little bit like backed by IGN as well. So people feel like, okay, if IGN is talking about it and if they've got an exclusive on it and if they think it's good, then yeah, you could. It's more likely that people will want to pick up the system. Yusuf, hello, how are you? Why is not a worldwide release? You're making a handheld PC. Don't release it in Japan. Big mistakes. Yeah. If they're going to release it in Japan, they need to release it last there because they're just going to buy all of them, right? They're just going to, they're going to, in Japan, this is going to sell gangbusters. Because I think a lot of people there, they really want a portable system. And while we'll get into like the design and ergonomics of this in a sec, this does feel like it's a little bit more than say like a Vita or a mobile. So it's not exactly portable, but it's portable enough to pull you away from the desk. And then say like if you want to play on the couch, you can play on the couch. If you want to take it in your bag, you can. It's not something that you can just fit in your pocket. So people may still prefer, say, like a mobile because it's just easier to carry that around everywhere. It's like you're all in one thing. It's got your camera there and everything else that you need there. So I guess there is still some way to make this thing a little bit smaller. But then again, there is that level of comfort, right, for having a 7-inch screen. Whereas if you go a little bit smaller, like a 3.5-inch screen, sorry, this is 5, right? This is Vita is 5. If you have 3.5, then yeah, it starts to get a little bit too small now. Like I feel like, say, like an iPhone 4 size is almost a little bit too small for like portable gaming. And there are some systems in that retro space where you've got like emulators on it and to play older games. There are some of these systems that are like 3.5-inch or smaller. So what we're going to do today, right, is we're going to, and I've been looking at the browser the whole time, looking at this thing. But what we're going to do today is first, I'm going to play the IGN video. So that's about 8 minutes long. And I might stop it here and there to talk about it. But mostly I'll just play it straight through, so it'll be faster. And then we're going to get into the Steam Deck website. And then we're going to go through everything in that website. I think it should take maybe like less than an hour, I guess. And then also we're going to talk about this Windows Central article about SteamOS and what that's all about, and how all of these Windows games are compatible on SteamOS. I thought maybe you guys would be interested in that because they said you can basically play every game and it's on SteamOS, but SteamOS is Linux. So let's talk about how that's all going to work. So first of all, let's go and watch the IGN video. Let me sort myself out. And I think we're going to go full screen right away. So let me know if you can hear this. I'm going to turn this desktop audio up a little bit. I think you guys can still hear me. I think I'm having a problem with the desktop audio. I'm not sure why it's not playing the desktop audio. That's really weird to me. So yeah, having a bit of trouble with the audio there. Let me know in the chat if you can hear it or not. but it looks like it's not playing the desktop audio. I don't know why. Maybe it's in full screen. Like if I, or maybe,
The face button.
okay, so it was my headphones. I'm not sure why, but should be able to hear it now. I just won't be able to hear what they're saying, but that's okay. So I'll just keep playing the video, and let me back up a little bit.
However, as soon as I held it myself, the layout felt completely natural. The full-size thumbsticks felt precise, and while the D-pad wasn't quite as clicky as I'd like, it was fully serviceable for rounding out some quarter circles in Guilty Gear Strive. Similarly, the face buttons and bumpers all felt solid, and served me well through a few runs of Hades. The triggers did feel a little bit squishy for my taste, but it's worth noting that I was using a non-final hardware unit, so it's possible that things might improve there as Valve tweaks the deck before launch. On the backside are 4 rear buttons, a welcome feature for anyone who's grown accustomed to using Pro-style controllers like the Xbox Elite. These, like the rest of the buttons and other inputs, can be fully customized to whatever you like thanks to Steam Input, Valve's commitment to making useful custom key bindings available for almost any controller layout. Underneath the thumbsticks are one of the deck's standout features, 2 precision trackpads, which give you access to mouse controls for games that don't play well with a controller.
The trackpads here are an evolution of the same technology that we've been working on since the Steam controller days and experimenting with internally. You also have seen some of our trackpad work as part of the Index controller, for example. They can be used for many different things. We have a keyboard that lets you do dual thumb typing. In-game, you can map them to areas of the screen for the mouse cursor to jump there and be kind of a one-to-one region type input. You can create on-screen menus that pop up on top of the game and have many customizable like macro buttons or keyboard keys. And you can just use it for mouse input, where it's really powerful and reliable for the people that are comfortable with that sort of input.
Both the thumbsticks and the trackpads are also capacitive, which means they can tell when your finger is on them. Combined with the internal gyro sensor, it gives you a weirdly precise level of control that, after a brief adjustment period, is honestly not far off from using a regular mouse. Yes, even in first-person shooters like Doom Eternal. Finally, the 7-inch screen is touch-enabled as well, giving you yet another option for controlling your games. The Steam Deck will draw immediate comparisons to the Nintendo Switch, but while it might look like a handheld console, Valve's device has much more in common with a desktop gaming PC. The Steam Deck runs a custom version of SteamOS that gives you a console-like experience on the surface, but under the hood is a full-blown PC.
It's a PC. We don't think people should be locked into a certain direction or a certain set of software that they can install. If you buy a Steam Deck, it's a PC. You can install whatever you want on it. You can attach any peripherals you want to it. Maybe a better way to think about it is that it's a small PC with a controller attached as opposed to a gaming console.
I think it differs from these kind of platforms mainly because you can just customize the experience and use all the options at your disposal that are typically associated with PC gaming. We think that while there will be a pretty approachable entry point where you can see the games that work really well by default and and get a pretty seamless gaming experience. If you want to go one step further and use all of these options, you can. Customize your controls, your level of performance, battery life, use Steam Workshop or even mods that are outside of the Steam Workshop. All these options that are dear to to PC gamers are fully supported by the deck.
This means you can do pretty much anything on it that you can do at your desk. Plug in a mouse and keyboard? Yep. Tab out of your games to a browser or video? Sure. Load up third-party programs or even other game stores? No problem. You could even wipe SteamOS entirely and install a fresh version of Windows if you want. But I will say the default SteamOS is smooth and efficient at getting you into your games, so I would imagine most people won't want or need to go that far. The point is, you can if you want to. Importantly, this also means that all of Steam's features, like cloud saves, are fully functional here. You can start playing a game on your desktop PC, save and quit, then load up and continue playing portably on your Steam Deck, with all of your progress, key bindings, and mods fully intact. You can also suspend games indefinitely on the deck itself, similar to how the Switch works. though you can't have multiple games suspended at once, like with Quick Resume on the Xbox Series X. Valve also told me that they're looking into ways to cloud sync suspended games between desktop and deck, meaning you could potentially hop between platforms without needing to save and quit, but that functionality wasn't in place yet during my time with the device. While the Steam Deck is obviously designed for portable gaming, it's also fully functional as a desktop PC. Using a USB-C dock, you can connect it to a monitor, mouse and keyboard, Ethernet, and whatever other peripherals you want. Valve is developing an official docking station, which will be sold separately, but a standard USB-C dock will work just as well. In desktop mode, Steam Deck honestly just feels like a PC. The OS is Linux-based, but it feels largely familiar to Windows and is capable of running both Windows and Linux games. I played a bit of Factorio and Death Stranding with mouse and keyboard on a 32-inch monitor, and if it weren't for the deck sitting docked next to me on the desk, I would have honestly just forgotten that it wasn't running off of a traditional desktop PC. Of course, a PC gaming device isn't worth much if it can't play games well, but worry not, in the power department, the Steam Deck is no slouch.
We've been partnering pretty closely with AMD on bringing up next generation APU and developing the main board and the software solution around it. It has like 4 cores of Zen 2 architecture CPUs with SMT enabled, so up to 8 threads. And the GPU is based on the very latest AMD RDNA2 architecture, which supports all the latest features like ray tracing and variable ray shading. The total APU combined power is about 2 teraflop, which should let people play the games that they have in their library without issues at 720 and provides lots of horsepower to that effect.
2 teraflops puts the Steam Deck in the ballpark of the Xbox One and PS4. In practice, it's actually more impressive than that. Since it targets a 720p resolution, which is more than enough for the 7-inch screen, the Steam Deck is able to play current-gen PC games at medium to high settings at smooth frame rates. While I wasn't able to run benchmark tests during my hands-on time, I played Death Stranding, Doom Eternal, Control, and several others, all of which looked great and played smoothly. The deck comes in 3 different models, but power-wise they all have the same internals. The only difference is in storage space. The base model has 64 gigs of storage for $399. Moving up to the 256 gig model costs $529, while the top end will cost $649 for 512 gigabytes. All 3 storage devices are SSDs, however, the 256 and 512 gig models use an NVMe drive for even faster load times. And while the internal storage itself can't be upgraded, there's an SD card slot to expand your storage even further, which games can be installed onto and played directly off of. The Steam Deck will be available this holiday season with reservations starting soon. We've got a lot more coverage planned all month long, so for all that and more, keep it right here at IGN.
Okay, let me just deal with the screens. We'll go straight into the chat. And we'll answer all the questions in the chat, your comments, and then we'll go into this, the website where they have pretty much all the information that is available on this, and we'll go through that for people who haven't seen the website yet. Now, Old School 978, hello. He says, this is great. Volume could be higher on the stream. Sorry about that. Are you talking about my audio now, or are you talking about the IGN video? If it's the IGN video, sorry about that, but I can turn up the audio. This is how I normally have it, and it's that if you look on the OBS system, there's like green, yellow, and red. I'm already in the yellow, so it should be okay in terms of audio anyways for my voice. But let me know if you want me to adjust the audio in any way in the chat. Okay, Yusuf says 64 gigabytes in 2022. Damn it, pathetic. Okay, let me tell you, okay, why. And there's 3 systems there. So if you want to get upset, maybe the 512 gigabytes, maybe that's not enough for the top end storage. But I think obviously the reason is they wanted to keep the costs down or the 512 or the top end model. So they didn't want it to be like $799 or $899 because that would be kind of like what the GPD Win 3 was, or the AN Neo. That would be up there. Now, the interesting thing I think is they haven't mentioned if you can actually swap out those SSDs, at least not in any of the tech specs that I saw. It doesn't say whether the SSD is removable or not. So we're going to really have to find out if we can do that. One of my friends actually asked me in my WhatsApp group, and let me read this question out. He says, does it allow us to install our own NVMe? Because 500 gigabytes, I don't feel is enough for PC gaming, because PC game just install everything, including 4K textures, even if you don't use them, not optimized. Yep, so that's a bit of a concern, I think, if you wanted to play everything, but you wouldn't. Yeah, I think even those ANEOs, those sort of systems have 1 terabyte on them. And his second question was, is there drivers to use their functions after we wipe their OS clean and install Windows? That's a really good point. And I think, like, if you talk about this in other forums and things, I think these type of things should be mentioned so that more people are aware of them, because I think that's really important. Like, if you wipe their SteamOS, can you still use your trackpads in Windows? So I know on GPD Win, they have their own drivers and things, so it's not like it'll be difficult to do. It will just be, are people going to make enough fuss about this to get those things done? And sometimes with hardware, like if it completely bombs, like an Ouya, you guys remember the Ouya? People will just stop developing for it, and then the system is dead. So I think those two things are really important for this system. So thanks for my friend for bringing that up. Now, what else have we got here? So Confirm SK says, can install a microSD card so storage can be expanded. Yeah, and I think the expanded storage, like if you're going to play stuff on your microSD card, that should be fine for pretty much everything except AAA games. Like AAA games will need some sort of like hard drive, but the microSD should be okay for most of the other games, because you're going to store that in most of the stuff into RAM anyways. So it's not going to be that big of an issue, I think, for like, I guess 70-80% of the games. Everything up to like PS4 gen, I think, should be okay. And then obviously late PS4 gen, then maybe it's going to start to really need to like put that on your SSD or your 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage. But even your eMMC storage is going to be pretty similar to your microSD card. So that base model, that 399 base model, is really for people who see this as like a handheld system, going to play those games that can easily play on handhelds. Things like there are a lot of Vita ports on Steam. Once the Vita died out, all of those developers started putting stuff onto PC, and you're going to be able to play those really comfortably on this at 720p. And we'll get into like the tech specs and all of that and stuff. And I don't want to just ramble on about everything, but yeah, that 64 gigabyte model, there's a reason they brought that out there, because there's still a lot of stuff that you can play with, I guess, a system that is 2 teraflops or less. Old school 978, it doesn't have enough onboard memory to play Warzone. That's a fail. Are you talking about the fact that Warzone is like over 100 gigabytes in storage? Because yeah, I'm not exactly sure what to do about that. Maybe you have to get the 512 gigabyte model, but you should be able to run that on the system, I think. It's got 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 memory, which we'll get into in a second, but I think they should be able to play it at 720p. Okay, Yusuf, our Doulajian, you have to buy an SD card if you don't own one. Old School 978 says 256 gigabytes of NVMe M2 drive would have made the system thicker, but a lot more versatile. No, so there's three systems. There's a 399 system with 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage, or whatever that eMMC or I can't remember, but that old style of memory, which was really slow. And then they have 256 gigabytes and a 512 gigabytes SSD. Those two systems have SSDs in them. SD cards super cheap these days. For handheld, it's great. Not competing with consoles or PC. This console is x86 based. It runs unadulterated PC titles. SD card bandwidth will be problematic. Your audio is great. IGN was not. Thank you. You're awesome. It looks good. 2 teraflops. Seems a bit underwhelming, but I digress. So let me hold off on that 2 teraflops or 1.6 teraflops that they've listed in the tech specs. So 2 teraflops. That's because you're running at 720p. So I think that should be fine for 720p. Like if you have a very similar system to a PS4, that's going to be fine for 720p most of the time. And even in stuff like Neo, so they had switches in that game where you could select either 720p or 60 FPS or 1080p and 30 FPS. So the PS4 really, if you think about it, at 1.8 teraflops, it probably wasn't powerful enough for 1080p. What you really needed for 1080p was about 4 teraflops, but they didn't have it. But of course, they were going to upsell that and tell everybody, hey, this is a 1080p system. So a lot of the time they had dynamic resolution. So sometimes you would get 1080p, sometimes you would get 900p, and in really intensive moments, you get 720p on the PS4. So for this system right here, 2 teraflops is fine for 720p or 800p. The screen is 1280 by 800, and 800 would probably be like 10% more. The only thing is, like, if you stick it into the dock and then you put that into a monitor with like 1080p, well, then maybe it's not going to work so well in docked mode. Though, you know, there are going to be lots of games that you can still play in docked mode at 1.8 teraflops, 1.6 teraflops. Switch is 400 gigaflops. Yeah, so exactly. Like the Switch, 400 gigaflops. And that's why I say the Switch developers are very, very underrated. There's, like, if you're working with 400 gigaflops and you can make games look as good as that, have games like Mario Kart and Smash Brothers that look amazing, with so much vibrancy and color and like art design. Yeah, they're very talented developers at Nintendo. I think very underrated. Megacolor says, which version y'all picking up? So I'm not 100% sure. I might talk a little bit more about it when we get to the pricing of this. But yeah, it's not available in my region. I'm in the Asia region at the moment, but I might be moving back to Australia. So I don't know when I'm getting it, but this is still all really exciting. If I had to see, I can find a reason to get the 64 gigabyte one as well, even though you guys might be thinking, what, you know, if you're going to get one, just get the most expensive one, the 512. So I guess there are a number of reasons, really. Like the first one is the SSD. Like, believe it or not, like SSDs are hot. I had the GPD Win 2, and one of the reasons why I ended up selling it after I got it, I had it for about a month, was because it was very hot with the SSD. Now, there was obviously something wrong with that first initial prototype version. I ended up getting a prototype. I was like one of 10 people who decided to pick up the early bird version of the GPD Win 2, and they had problems with the SSD. So I'm not going to put it all down to the GPD Win 2 is not very good. They did reduce the temperatures on that for the final retail version, although I would still believe that it does get hot because they need heat sinks. These SSDs need heat sinks. So I guess, yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Like if you don't really like hot, sticky hands, like think laptop, right? Like a laptop gets hot. So it'll be a bit like that. So that's one reason. If you don't like that sort of thing, maybe you'd get the 64 gigabyte model. The eMMC memory won't run as hot because that's what's basically in the Switch. So it just won't run as hot. But on the other hand, like if you want the full PC system, if you want the full PC experience, yeah, you'd obviously have to go for the 512. The 256 is okay, but it's like another $100, and I think you can just jump up to the 512. And I think that's very important to get that extra 256 gigabytes of storage. You're just going to need it. If you have 256 gigs, then you're really only installing like maybe 4 or 5 games at the most. So having a few more games on 512 is just makes a lot more sense. This isn't really something like, oh, are you going to choose between a 2 terabyte version or a 4 terabyte, and you don't need that extra 2 terabyte. I think at this low range, you're probably going to want to have that extra 256. And I'm not trying to upsell their system. You guys decide whatever you want to buy. Okay, there's a lot of comments here, but we'll quickly go through them. I'm bullish on the RDNA2 compute units. Yeah, exactly. I think this is going to be really good because we've been on those Vega compute units on those APUs for such a long time, and we've known the performance on those. Now, the interesting thing is like, is it going to be overclockable? It should be. I've had those APUs before, and you can overclock those internals, the internal APU, so you can get it running a bit faster. And so if you wanted to, you could overclock the system. However, on portables, right, you're just going to kill the battery. Now, they said that you can run this at 4 watts or 15 watts, and probably anything in between. So it's really up to you, but I would say 15 watts, yeah, you're looking at like a couple of hours at the most for this type of system. And I haven't seen the battery yet. We'll need to check the tech specs for that. But yeah, if you're 15 watts, I mean, your Nintendo Switch, what is it, like 10 watts, 3 hours? There's the new version of the Switch that runs it at 7 watts, and you get like an extra couple of hours. But yeah, even at 7 watts, the max you're getting is like 5 hours. So it's not going to be a whole lot of it's not going to be like the Game Boy days. Okay, old school 978, yeah, the Twitch. I look at this more as a mini PC, considering it will likely run a full-blown Linux distro. Yeah, of course. You can just wipe the SteamOS and then just install whatever you want, Linux or Windows. I think a lot of people are just going to do that and jump straight into Windows, provided they have the drivers to change all of the other controllers and everything like that. And because I mentioned that you can install Windows without actually saying Windows, yeah, they're going to have drivers and things like that. And if not, somebody's going to make them. I'm starting to feel more confident about that as I talk about this thing. So I think to answer my friend's question before, yeah, I think somebody's going to do it if they're not going to do it. Okay, so can't play Doom Eternal. Why can't you play Doom Eternal? They've got it in the on the screenshot right there, so for sure you'll be able to play Doom Eternal, and I think it's going to run really well as well. id Software's id Tech engine runs amazing, so it's going to run Doom Eternal just fine. Confirm on paper, this is a portable PlayStation 4. 100%. This is a portable PlayStation 4, and I think that's really, really exciting. In the real world, it'll be faster because of IPC games with RDNA2. I mean, in terms of IPC games between RDNA2, RDNA1, and Vega, I think we're looking at very close between RDNA and RDNA2. Now, I know with, say, something like the 5700 XT versus the 6700 XT, with the same number of compute units, you were getting 20% faster. However, there's a lot of different things. Like inside, there's more, there's infinity cache on the RDNA2. There is the higher clock speeds. So now you're being able to clock like at 2.5 gigahertz, whereas the 5700 XT was clocking at around 2 gigahertz. So you're getting those type of gains away from, say, like the actual architecture or the IPC. I think there will be some. It's just RDNA to RDNA2 is very close. I think there's more of a difference between, say, Vega and RDNA2, which is why it's exciting, because right now the APUs that we're getting have Vega in them. So I've been begging for RDNA2 APUs. So this is really the start. This is the start of, and hopefully, like in a couple of years, we will get something that's 4 teraflops that can do 1080p with an APU, and they're going to start putting that thing into laptops. They're going to start putting, and we're going to be able to buy them, and then we're going to make mini PCs with them, 1080p. Everyone has a 1080p TV, so I think that's when it's going to get real exciting. But this is still pretty exciting. Like this is going to be fine just for 720p. I think they nailed the specs. Confirmed SK said it in the Discord. Make sure you join the Discord as well if you like Discord, where we're in there and we're talking about gaming in the Discord. There's a link in the description. So yeah, Confirmed SK said, yeah, these are really good specs. I totally agree. Like the specs are really good for this thing. Okay, Doom Eternal coming to Nintendo Switch. If Switch can play it, can too. I have a quick question. So tomorrow, when I reverse it, how long will I have to pay the remaining reserve? Pre-orders are tomorrow. Okay, I'll leave that question. I don't know about the pre-orders because I'm not pre-ordering one. I'm in the Asia region. So I'm not 100% sure about pre-orders. But I think you can do it through Steam. So maybe that's the way they go. That's pretty cool. Like, that's probably what Sony and Xbox and all of these guys should have been doing. Hey, pre-order the system on our store. Yes, people can just make lots and lots of accounts, Steam accounts, but surely that's going to help in terms of scalping. Proton Tom says, I already got lucky with a PS5. Why get this for a couple Steam early access games or whatever? Why get this? Okay, yeah, you know, one of the things that I like to talk about, or I haven't been able to talk about, but I would like to talk about, is I think we have too many games. Like, I don't know if people really think about it that much, but for me, I'm always burdened by my backlog and how many games I've got. Like, I haven't done my video on this yet, but this is what I got in June. This is what I got in June. And it's a bit unusual. I don't normally get that many games, but like, because I decided, okay, I'm going to collect some Switch games before they disappear in terms of physicals anyway. I ended up getting a lot of games. But yeah, even with that number of games right there that I've shown you, that's going to take me like a couple of years to actually finish. So in other words, I'm not really going to finish them. So yeah, you're totally right. Like when you say, why get this? Yeah, I think most people really only need the one system. So if you're not interested in this, don't feel like, you need to get all of the systems out there. I don't have a PS5. I don't have an Xbox Series X. I'm trying to hold off on those two things as long as I can. And usually, normally what I like to do is like, I have a minimum number of games I want to get before I get a system. So if, say like the Switch, for example, I bought a Switch, I bought a few games for it, but I really weren't going to collect it until there were more games. And so once I got over, like, I think it was about 10 games, I said, okay, I'm going to go and get more games for this system. But I think with systems these days, say like the PS5 and Xbox Series X, there really isn't that much point to collect the physical of it. So I don't feel compelled as much to go and buy it straight away. Because the physicals, well, they won't run out, the digitals won't run out. And that physical is really just a CD key that you go and you install the entire thing onto your PS5, and then you have to do day one updates. So it almost feels like that CD. And I'm not trying to like, I guess, be negative about the PS5. I'm just saying like this is the reality of what's going on right now. Is like the discs for the PS5, they're kind of more like CD keys rather than actually like something that you collect and then you can just put it into your system like 10 years later and play it, because you're still going to need like day one updates. Okay. It's just nice to have options in the handheld market. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's going to be really cool. People are going to be able to choose between like the more storage of something like an Neo or GPD Win 3 and something like this. I think most people will probably just end up picking this because of the brand of Steam. Xavier Guzman, thank you so much for 99 cents. And I totally hear you about the dumbbells. Yep. I'm putting a lot of effort into the channel, but yeah, it is what it is. Like, hopefully we can get to 10,000 subscribers soon. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure to go and subscribe and help me out. Xavier Guzman, I want one of these. Yeah, so I'm not 100% decided whether I'm getting one. I'll tell you guys the truth. Mostly because I have a Switch. So, and then I have all of those games that I just posted, which I need to play. And then if I get this, that kind of distracts from what I need to do there with the Switch. And like having too many systems, that type of thing. I do love this. I do love this. I think $600, like, just to get it and then not use it, would be a little bit of a waste for me personally. But if there's stuff that I find out about it, I'll definitely do videos at a later stage about it. I thought I would do a longer show for this because there's so much to talk about it. I thought you guys might be want to talk about it as well, which is why I'm doing this live stream. Okay, means I'm okay. I wish I could get it tomorrow, but I don't get paid till next week. You'll be able to. Maybe they'll have the pre-orders for a bit longer. So see how it goes, right? But yeah, if you want one, I would pre-order one. Like 100%. If you want one, you need to pre-order this thing because okay, let's think about it. Like the PS5, maybe they sold like a couple of million units last year. Christmas completely sold out. And so I just don't know how many of these things they're going to make. And because they're not going worldwide, that already tells me that there's probably not that many units of it. And you think back to things like their Steam headsets, the Vive headset, they also sell out. Everything just sells out. This is Christmas time. If you want one, you have to go and pre-order it. Maybe you're going to have to put it on some sort of credit. And I don't normally want to say that. But it might save you some heartache later of like actually having to find a scalped one if you really want one. No, of course, like if you don't have the money, don't buy it, right? That's the easiest way. This is just a luxury handheld system you play games with. I'm sure you have tons of ways to play games already, so this is not something that is a necessity. Like I don't want to be a mom or anything, but sometimes these things need to be said. Okay. What do you think of the Aya Neo? I really like it. I really like the Aya Neo. I haven't held it. My friend got one. I think he went with the Aya Neo. We kept talking about Aya Neo and GPD Win 3. I think he went with the Aya Neo. I need to double check with him. But yeah, I like the Aya Neos over the GPD Win 3, mostly because of the form factor, the sliding screen and whatnot. And I don't really need the keyboard that much, so I think I would be okay with like the on-screen keyboard. And I think the internals are pretty good. I didn't want to get one because I had the Switch already. I'd be more interested in the Steam Deck than the Aya Neo, but yeah, as somebody who got a GPD Win 2 and excited about PC portables, that sort of thing. If I didn't have a Switch, I would probably 100% lock in for the Aya Neo or the Steam Deck thing. But I don't know, Mega Color, if you're still there, tell me like which one you're going to get, like the Aya Neo or the Steam Deck, because I think now that this is out, I think people are going to lean to this. I think people are going to get this instead of the Aya Neo. Old School 978. I anticipate an ARM-based competitor. Perhaps Nvidia will roll out their own handheld. That's a really good point. I reckon they will, because maybe they'll have their own store as well. I mean, we have Epic Game Store, we have Windows Game Store, we have all of these launchers and stuff. Why wouldn't Nvidia do one and then make money from the hardware and the software? I think that would be super interesting. And it's not really a space that's occupied by Sony or Sony or Microsoft. And obviously PC games are different to Nintendo games. So I think they may feel like there's a market there for a Nvidia handheld. And it totally makes sense because they just got ARM. I mean, even in the past, they could have done it with the Tegra chips. But they... And then there's another thing, right? Like how these companies work, and if they're actually stepping into other people's markets, they also want to be careful of that because they're their partners too. Like if you're two companies and you do different things, and all of a sudden now you start doing your competitor's thing, and you kept clear of each other before, that can bring some tension and stuff. So because Nvidia supplies the Nintendo Switch chips, there is also reason that it may not come out because they may just supply Nintendo instead. I hope that makes sense. So for Nvidia's, yes, they could totally make one. Whether they're willing to step on Nintendo Switch's market, that's another question, really. Why get it? Steam has a lot of games and it's a handheld PC. Yeah. We'll get into like... they're not really negatives. They're more like differences of, say, a portable PC gaming experience, which is something I tried on the GPD Win 2. So, and also, you know, the thing is, like, there are quite a lot of third-party ports on the Switch as well. And you can clearly tell that they didn't optimize it for the handheld version. So the gameplay is fine in a big TV. And then when you shrink it down into the PC handheld experience, all of the text, all of the windows, all of the things that you're supposed to do suddenly get squashed into like a 5-inch or 6-inch screen. And then it makes it difficult. Like, it's not the pleasing game experience. And you may get like a little bit agitated. So then you're like, okay, well, I have this PC portable, or I can just jump straight into my PC, my actual PC with like a 27-inch screen. Maybe it's more comfortable to play it on this larger screen. So that's another thing that you should think about before you buy something like this. There's many things to consider when you buy a PC portable. So Proton Tom says, I do hope it goes well. I don't want anything like another Google Stadia. Well, the thing is, it's not really like Google Stadia because this is a handheld. You can keep it forever. You can play this until the end of time. I've still got tons of people on my Twitter that play Vita still and talk about Vita. Still write reviews for Vita. And it's 2021. It's been like 9 years since the Vita came out. You can play this for a long time. Let's see. I'm buying this handheld beast. Oh yeah, so back to Potent Tom. So if you're worried like it's going to die on you, in terms of support maybe, but in terms of like actually using it and playing it for a long time, I don't think you should be that worried about playing it for a long time. Unless of course somehow those games in the future require some drivers and now you can't access them for whatever reason. I think that might be a problem. But in terms of the actual hardware and being able to play this for a long time, yeah, I don't think that's going to be a problem. You own all the games, you own the hardware, you're going to be able to play it for ages. Okay, if you like, QE, Steam games on the go, I think they should kill Switch. Okay, is this going to kill Switch? Of course, it's not going to kill the Switch. QE, the Switch, okay, the Switch. You cannot play Zelda on the Switch. You cannot play Animal Crossing on the Switch. I don't know if you can see that. You cannot play... well, maybe later you might be able to play Fire Emblem on the Switch. You can't play Mario Kart on the Switch. Sorry, I think maybe you can't see it. But you get my point, right? Like, it's not going to kill the Switch. The Switch has 100 million units out there, well, 85 million units, but it will be 100 million soon. The Switch is well and alive. It's going to be alive for ages. One of the reasons why I collect it, because there's 100 million units out there. So at some point in time, there's going to be lots of cheap games. And there's going to be a Switch 2 for sure. There's going to be this Switch 2 that plays 4K with DLSS and all that sort of thing. It's coming. It wasn't what people expected with the OLED version, but then I don't think they're ready for it. I think they're going to bring it out with the Breath of the Wild 2. I did read reports that Breath of the Wild 2 is on track or doing better than it was supposed to. So it probably could come out earlier. So they were thinking about bringing out Breath of the Wild 2 this year, 2021, but they decided to hold it back. And maybe they're just going to release it at the same time now. Breath of the Wild 2 with the 4K Switch. And the 4K Switch will probably play all of the old Switch games as well. So it'll kind of be like a new Nintendo 3DS, that type of thing. But the old Switch, if you're thinking about getting one, that's not a bad idea, you know, because like this will be supported for like at least another 2 or 3 years before you get that, before they games suddenly require like the Switch 2. You still have plenty of time with the Switch. Plus, it's got that entire library that we've had for like the last 4 years. Imagine emulators on this thing. Well, I mean, imagine emulators on PC. With 1.8 teraflops, I think PS2 should be no problem, and PS3 maybe, but I don't think you'd be able to emulate PS4 games. So really, you're still confined to about PS2 or before, maybe PS3. Okay. Megacolor says your Steam account must be invalid. Additionally, for the first 48 hours of reservation availability, your account must be in good standing and have made a purchase on Steam prior to June 2021. Now, I did say I was going to run through the hardware of this. So let me just have a look at this this Steam handheld. So it says here, all-in-one portable PC gaming. Now, the one thing about this system is like, I noticed that it was very wide. So I think design-wise, ergonomically, it is what it is. Like if you're going to try and fit a 7-inch screen, you're going to have like big, bulky sides on the controllers like this. There's really no other way to go about it. Even if you literally like got rid of the bezels around this thing, it's still going to be pretty big like a Nintendo Switch. Now, coincidentally, it's the Switch OLED that actually trimmed down the bezels. And both of these things will be more or less likely out at around about the same time. This is going to be out in December. So it's interesting that this is going to be way bigger than the Switch. I can already see it that, you know, it's quite chunky, quite thick. Now, a lot of people might like that because, you know, it gives them something to hold. So I'm more of a guy who likes a better in-between. So I don't mind it so much if the systems are really small. Like even with the Vita, I'm really happy with the Vita. Obviously, the screen size is not that great anymore because it's 5-inch and a little bit smaller than what I'd like. But this is very comfortable for playing games. And even the Switch Portable, this is ideal for portable gaming. Like if you're going to go somewhere, this makes more sense. Of course, you know, if you have kids and stuff, then, you know, you got to take this one because it's got the multiple Joy-Cons. But yeah, this is quite big. You're going to have to need a bit of space in your bag. Hardware designed to put real games in real hands, powerful, comfortable, versatile. We'll talk more about the hardware in just a second in the tech specs. Your Steam library, which is pretty cool, honestly. Like, I've been wanting something like this for a long time. But again, like, you know, I have a lot on my plate right now in terms of games and stuff. So I may hold off a little bit. And I can't decide between the 64 gigabyte version or the 512 gig version. I think they both have good uses, honestly. So this guy here is using the trackpads. He's using the mouse. So it looks like it's working pretty well. And it's interesting to see the text on it, like how small the interface is. I think that's really important. Like sometimes these type of things get unnoticed and you're going, oh, it's so cool having a PC game. But then the actual experience is something that you don't really know until you actually get it. And you're like, oh, the text is really small here, or the icons are really small here. And this is probably going to be something that's going to be different for everyone. Now, of course, with PC gaming, then you can take it to the next level. You can adjust all of your UI sizes if you wanted to, even if you needed to like get a mod or hack it or whatever. You can do it. It just becomes a little bit more fiddly. It's not like you got a Nintendo Switch and you just plop the cartridge in. Everything just works. This takes a little bit more of a fiddle around with even graphics settings. Okay. If you want to play like a AAA game, now you're going to have to dial in all your settings just right to get that frame rate right. So this is something that you need to do for every game. And again, like it takes a lot longer than say if you just have a PC. A PC, maybe you would go like, oh, 1080p, just set it to the medium preset and go. Sometimes with these lower powered systems, you do need to adjust it or fine tune it more. So it takes longer. You do want to go like, hey, maybe here I want to go medium textures because they're kind of similar to the high textures. And then maybe here I want to go low shadows because I don't care about shadows, for example. So it takes a little bit longer to fine tune on a lower powered system. Okay, well, we're here at the pricing. So why don't we talk about the pricing? It says here there's 3 storage options. There's no difference in terms of the power inside. It's $399 for the 64 gigabytes version. It's actually eMMC. I kept on saying it wrong. I said eMMC, so I apologize for that. And you get a carrying case, which is super cool. Like, that's such a thoughtful thing to do because with all my portable systems, I have to buy a carrying case. And I'm so glad they're going to put something nice there, something official as well. I think that's really cool. Now, why did I say that the 64 gigabyte version is still an option for a lot of people? Okay, well, one, you've got the micro SD card slot where everybody has going to put many of their games anyway. So even if you get, say, the 512 gigabyte version, once you run out of that storage, you're going to have to put your games on your micro SD card, and you could get like a 1 terabyte SD card. So I'm sure like most people are going to have to do that at some stage. So the other thing is that if you're going to be playing a lot of the games from, say, like from the middle of PS4 era down and below, then I think the eMMC storage should be good enough to play those type of games. Say like from, I don't know, 2014, 2015 and below. I think you'll be fine with that eMMC storage. There may be some games, like obviously, like if you're playing something recent, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, or something that needs an SSD, right? It doesn't explicitly say SSD, but then it's going to start taking a long time to load stuff. Then you're probably going to want to get one of the other 2 options. So I think the 256 or the 512, if you're going to be playing like open world games like Assassin's Creed or Cyberpunk, you're probably going to want to get those 2 models instead. Whereas the 64 gigabyte version, you're still going to be able to play a ton of your, like maybe 80-90% of all your games. I think maybe to future-proof it a little bit, yeah, you probably want to go with those other 2 systems. But that doesn't make the $399 64 gigabyte version obsolete. It just gives people another option if they want to get it. Now, if you're the type of person who's thinking, oh, will I have any regrets? then just go with that with one of the other two options. This base option is really for people who know, okay, I know exactly what the system is going to do. I know I want to play these Vita games. I want to play these visual novels. I want to play all these JRPGs. I'm going to get this one, okay? Okay, so the 512 gigabyte, 512, sorry, I'll start again. 529 US dollar version is for the 256 gigabyte model. Now, I gotta say, I would go for one or the other. I would either go for the 399 or the 649. I think the 529 is still okay. Like maybe you're desperate for a system, but I think 256 in general is really small. Like I wouldn't even get that for my PC right now. I would, like, for a PC, if you're gonna have a PC system, I wouldn't just get like a 256 gigabyte C drive SSD. I would at least get a 512, and then you'd have your other hard drives if you need to, or SSDs if you need to. But I think 256 gigabyte, I don't know about you guys, I feel like 256 gigabytes is a little bit small. And let me just go through the last one, the 512 gigabyte model. I think if you're serious about this, you probably want to get the 512 gigabyte model, because obviously the 64 gigabytes with the eMMC storage is a little bit limited, although there is a use case for that. But the 649, it's just $120 more than that 256 gigabyte model. So I would suck it up and just pay that extra for that. Because many of these games are like 50 gigabytes now, like if not 100 gigabytes. Not that I would really want to like put a ton of those type of games onto the system, but even still, like if you're looking at, say, the storage required on a Nintendo Switch game, which could sometimes be like, under 10 gigabytes, under 5 gigabytes, your games, like my friend said, they're basically unoptimized. So like they just make you install like 10 gigabytes, 15, 20 gigabytes, whatever it is, because they figure everyone's got lots of storage space. So yeah, it's going to run out real quick on those storage systems. So I think 512 is probably the only way to go. Faster storage carrying case. It's got premium anti-glare etch glass. So wouldn't be too worried about the premium anti-glare edge glass, unless of course this 256 gigabyte model has some sort of like plastic screen on it, kind of like a Switch. So in that case, it'd be like, okay, well, you'd probably want the glass version because it's going to look better. And I will say, like, if the 256 gigabyte model has glass on it, then that's perfectly fine, because then you will just put your own screen protector on it, and there's your premium anti-glare edge glass that's unscratchable. So yeah, unless of course guys don't like screen protectors. Okay, let me get back to the chat, because I know you guys have been posting a lot of comments there. It says now the stream is getting poor performance, but I think the stream should be okay. Old school 978 says, I'm convinced I will get one. Why? Because I can play games on this and develop on it as well. Yeah, really good reason why, because like you can use it in that docked mode as well. Just hook up a monitor on it with a deck. Yeah, so I think the docked mode is pretty cool. Sleeping Elephant pre-order cost $5. So I think there was somebody else in here. It was Krilio. Krilio, if you want to just reserve it, yeah, Sleeping Elephant says it's going to be $5. So just put that $5 let down. Like, sure, everybody is going to do that anyway. And that, honestly, these things are going to be scalped, and I don't mean to like add into like the whole scalping thing, but if you don't want it, you're going to be able to just sell it if you don't want it later on. Now, I hope you guys like buy it to actually own it. But of course, if you guys want to sell it, like, you know, I don't think you're going to lose anything. Let's put it that way. Or lose too much. Yeah, 5 more months pre-order is dumb, but it's better than Scalpers market. Well, the 5-month pre-order, I mean, it's basically like everything that we've been getting on Kickstarter. And, you know, I'm somebody who plays a lot of board games as well. So, well, not at the moment anyway, with the pandemic and lockdown and that. But with board games, my gosh, I ordered something last year, 2020. It's going to come next year, 2022. So it's a 2-year wait for my board game. Okay. Steven says, any concern with build quality? I don't think so. Unless you're going to get something weird like a Joy-Con drift that people don't know about. But I don't think, you know, most of the electronics these days, if you're talking about like the like how it feels in the hand, you know, I think most of them feel pretty good. Like the Neo, most people are happy with the build quality of Neo. The manufacturing is really good these days. I mean, come on, like you've been getting everything from China for like the last 20 or 30 years, and it just keeps getting better and better. So I don't think there'll be that much of an issue in terms of build quality. It would be an anomaly if there was something wrong with the build quality, I think. Mega Color says 100% I'm getting the Steam Deck. Good for you. Confirmed SK, I wonder if Nvidia has a non-compete agreement with Nintendo. Same reason you don't see AMD making their own handhelds. Okay, so yeah, no one really talks about this, but why hasn't AMD brought out their own APUs? I think it's because they are also supplying these same APUs to PS5 and Xbox Series X, which is why they may not bring it out right now. There may be some sort of like, exclusively timed period where they're going to provide these just to, and it makes sense for them as well, actually, when you think about it. Like you got to load up on consoles when you can, because if you have a good launch, then that's going to set you well for the rest of the generation. That's how consoles work. You need a big install base. You can't be like Wii U, where you put out like a few units here and there. You got to have a massive launch, and so you got to get that price down as low as possible. You're going to make as many units as you can, then make it back up on console sales. Really, it's min-maxing, optimizing one or the other. And so maybe Nvidia is also like, hey, I got to sell as many Switches as possible, which is, you know, I don't want to take some of those and make them into my own Steam handheld and divert attention, that type of thing. Yusuf, people say Valve is shitty Steam controller. I don't really like the Steam controller, to be honest. But look, maybe they've learned, because this is designed with this kind of edge at the bottom left and right hand corner, whereas on the Steam controller it was the other way around. It was inverted, and I really thought that looked a bit weird and odd. Most people who used it didn't really mind it, but I prefer this look anyway, even if it doesn't affect the actual ergonomics of it. So I think they are learning something from everything that they do. They probably knew that Steam machines just failed. Now they're actually making hardware, because Steam machines, they let other people make the hardware, and that was a terrible decision. This almost like a culmination of, okay, what have we learned from the Steam controller? What have we learned from Steam machines? This is, and what are people doing in the market right now? Neos, GPD Wins, getting a lot of traction, Nintendo Switches. They see, you know, they're people that are interested in something that pulls them away from PCs. And they need something, right? They need something to get people on their store. There's too many launchers out there, like Epic Games and Windows Store. So they need their own thing where people are buying games, and then this is going to help drive people to the store again. And I'm not talking about it as if like I'm like Gabe Newell and I'm running the and I'm trying to make as much money as possible. I'm just talking about it in a way where why they would want to make this. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a break. I don't have a break screen for a second, but I need like 1 minute so I can open the door for somebody. So I'll be right back, okay? But don't go anywhere. Just stay there for 1 minute. I'll get through the rest of the chat, get through the tech specs. We haven't even talked about the internals of this yet. And I don't really know how long I've gone for. I've gone for an hour and a half. So maybe we'll make this 2 hours. But I'll be back in 1 minute. So make sure to stick around in here. Hello, I'm back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to open the door, so hopefully we don't get any interruptions. Yeah, I let my son into the room, which could be a mistake. But I gave him the Switch, so hopefully that keeps him occupied a little bit. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, playing with fire here, I think. And you guys, I think whoever joined me for my stream last week, they know what happens like when I let the kids in here. Animal Crossing, it's in this box here. I think it'll be in there. Okay, can you put this back? Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, I think we're good to go now. I still really haven't set up the whole streaming thing here on my home PC. Like I used to have like a little bit of a break, intermission type of screen. I haven't set that up here. But I'm back. So we'll just keep going. I know there's a lot of chat. I'm still trying to balance, hey, like chat stuff, and then I want to talk about what's in the software and tech specs. Maybe we go over 2 hours. Don't know, but okay, I'll quickly go through some of the chat here. I'll get to South Memphis's $5 in a second. Okay, so getting the Switch today for pre-order was easy. Maybe this news had buyers have second thoughts. Oh boy, like what are you guys getting? A Switch OLED or a Steam Deck? I think most people are just going to get the Steam Deck because I mean, if you wanted a Switch, you would have got a Switch ages ago anyways. So I don't think it's going to dampen the Switch OLED, but I think this is definitely like more interesting than this Switch OLED, like for people, because the Switch OLED it's the same thing, right? Like it's the same Switch internally. So the Switch OLED is really for a different audience anyway. It's for people who want Nintendo games. You can't get those games on PC, so there's going to be an audience for that. People who want that will get that. Now, the thing is, like, are there going to be people that get both? Well, I think maybe people probably won't get both. Okay, confirmed SK. People still play Game Boy Advance. Well, the thing with handhelds, right? Like all of my old handhelds have, don't work anymore. So even my DS died, or it's got a line in the screen. So there's something wrong with the screen. I ended up getting a DS while I was over in Japan, a second-hand version, just to make sure that I have something to play my Game Boy Advance games. My Game Boy Advance also died, my Game Boy died, my Xbox died, and my Xbox 360 died. So, the thing is, I'm kind of at this point where I'm at peace with consoles and these things not lasting forever anymore. I used to be of the mindset, okay, I'm going to buy a handheld and then I'm going to keep it forever and then be able to play that when I get older. But I'm more like, okay, I'm going to have this, or maybe I'll have one or two of them, and then I'll see how long I can get with it. I'll have at least a backup there. And if they last 10 or 20 years, that's great. But I don't really expect them to last that much longer. I know people who have the NESs and they still work from this day. I think you really have to get lucky if that is like that, to have such an old system back then still work today. I think the NES might almost be like 40 years old at this point. Okay, this kind of gives indie developers on PC another market they can break into. 100%. ATDQ says you can emulate all those. Megacolor PC have emulators so you can play Switch games. Oh, right. Can they play Switch games now? That's pretty amazing. I don't know about that yet. I haven't kept up with all of the emulator stuff. Confirmed SK ports will be much easier to do on this as well. ATTQ Switch games are not hard to emulate. Well, I think one of the things now is like, do you want to get a third-party game on the Steam Deck or do you want to get it on the Switch, right? Like, for example, why would I get Dark Souls on the Switch when I can just play it on this Steam Deck? I've already got it. So that's going to really so it's almost like, well, if you get a Nintendo system now, it's really just for Nintendo games. Like there wouldn't really be that much of a reason unless like you like the ergonomics of the Switch, you like the system that you're holding it, and it feels good to you. You like the battery life and all of that. It makes sense to get third party, but there's a lot of and you want something that you play and not have to worry about settings and all of that sort of thing, then yeah, sure, maybe that makes sense to pick up like the a third party game on the Switch. But I think the PC or the Steam Deck gives you other options as well. So you'd be able to fiddle around with the graphics options to get it how you want it. So if people are happy with that, then that makes sense to just, not even bother about getting the Switch version then. You could get the 64 gigabyte version and use an SD card for extra space. Yeah, and honestly, like when people say when people say slower speeds on the MicroSD, it's not really that bad. It's really not. Like most of the games you're going to be able to play perfectly. The game is going to just load up onto the RAM. Like it's really not an issue for games, I guess, like 2015 and before. So if you have a lot of old games, it's just not an issue. It may be an issue if you have something that's a little bit newer and you're going, like when they actually say, oh, hey, you need an SSD for this game, then if it falls back to the SSD speeds and you don't actually have it there, then it may slow down the game somewhat. ATDQ, you won't need to dial settings down on this. It's powerful and below 1080p. It will run everything at 60 easy. Yeah, Well, it's also about like thinking a little bit ahead as well. So, like 1 or 2 years in, you're going to need more teraflops, of course. So, uh, with any type of low spec system that I found, any type that I've ever got in my life, it's always been about like fiddling around with the graphics settings. So that can be a little bit of an annoyance for some people. So it's not going to be as simple as say like you just put the card into a Switch and just play it, which is seriously like a relief. Like for a lot of people who just want to get instant gaming, right? Like that's what a handheld is for. Like you got the quick resume and all of that sort of thing. You just want to pick it up and play. And sometimes it doesn't actually offer that. You're gonna have to like have 10-15 minutes where you play around with stuff. Of course, like, you know, if you're the type of person who plays a game from start to finish as like a 50-hour game, well, that's not really that big of a deal. But, you know, like Steam, you got a ton of games. You're going to be trying to play everything, and then you're going to have to adjust things. Okay, I'm going to try for the 649. It offers so much more. Basic model is lacking. 400 nits on a handheld. So is that good, 400 nits? I I have to like compare it to something else. Let me know in the comments like what you think about the brightness of the screen. But I'm happy with the brightness on like a Vita or the LCD version, by the way. And even the iPhone, very happy with it. I've got an iPhone 10R. Haven't really felt like I needed to upgrade it. Gets plenty bright, so I haven't really had too many issues with bright screens. Obviously, like even like older systems like DS and 3DS, they're still okay for me. My GBA before it died, the brightness, there was something wrong with it, and it was so low that Castlevania Circle of the Moon, one of the darkest games that you can get for the system, you couldn't even see what was going on, but you could tell it was running because the sound was on. That's how dark it got. Steven says, I am targeting 256 gigabytes. Okay, it's really interesting to hear from people who are interested in that middle model because let me know why, you guys, if you are getting the 256, why you're getting that version. Because I don't play more than 2 or 3 games at any point in time. Maybe put AAA games I am playing on SSD and older or indie games on MicroSD. Yep, okay, that's a perfectly, that totally makes sense. The 256 gigabyte model, if you are thinking about either the basic model or the 256 and you want something a little bit better, yeah, that would make sense to get the 256 gigabyte version then. 64 gigabytes is not enough. 256 is enough to start with, then can expand if you can't manage. Yeah, I'm wondering, and I don't think you'll be able to take the SSD out. I think it will be hardwired to the motherboard. That's my guess. Now, I don't know anything about this, and maybe we look at the tech specs later and it says you can just change out your SSD. But the fact that they've gone with eMMC internal storage, SSD storage on the other 2 models leads me to believe those things are fixed. And then even on the eMMC model, I don't think you're going to just be able to put in your own SSD. Somebody's going to have to buy the system, or somebody's going to have to ask Valve about this. But at this stage, I'm guessing the way they designed it, that they probably won't let you change it out, because then that would defeat the purpose of this 512 gigabyte model. And then most people are just going to put in their own SSD and then not buy the 512. Okay, confirmed SK. Imagine the balls on Gabe and didn't even lock down the OS. Such confidence. Because I think if it was me, because I don't play things like PUBG and Valorant or Destiny or whatever, and those seem to not have these anti-cheats working well on Linux. So because I don't play those type of games, I would probably just keep mine on SteamOS, because I need something that resembles a handheld experience, like almost like a big picture experience, right, on Steam. I need something easy to select my games on, and I don't really want to deal with the current PC Steam interface where the text is really small for all the games and have to scroll down on the left for my library. I want what they've shown here, like with just the posters for each of the games, and then just select my games that way. South Memphis, thank you so much for $5. So this is a new record for me, $5 super chat. So thank you so much for that. Will Scalpers ruin the launch of this or the Switch OLED? Yeah, they're going to. They're already going to do so. Make sure you pre-order the system if you really want one. And then so whenever the pre-orders go live, if you want one, go and get one. I'll be back in 30 seconds. I have to open the door. I'm back. My daughter is forcing me to watch her do something. This is what happens when you have kids. I do apologize, but I will be back in like 30 seconds. You gotta go, okay? It's some yo-yo thing. Okay, I gotta go. Okay, so, all right, let's get straight into this. Bookman says, great stream so far. Thank you so much. But yeah, just going back to that South Memphis super chat, will the Scalpers ruin the launch of this or the Switch OLED? Yeah, I think if you want one, you should definitely pre-order it. There's really no two ways about this. I don't think there's going to be that many units of this available, especially because it's the first run. They're going to have to test out the waters for this. So it's going to be hard to get. So okay. But and you know what? Like now that this is out, I think and the funny thing is, Nintendo must have heard this was coming out. Like they must have heard, which is why they made pre-orders yesterday. And you know, I was going to even put out like or talk about it in a live stream. Like, hey, you guys want to get the Switch OLED? Make sure you get it now. Okay, come on, go play Switch there. Okay, go, bye. Yeah, so I don't know. Is there anything else to add to that? If you want one, you better get one. We know what happened with the PS5, Xbox Series X, and the Series S. Like, I did not like the Series S because I thought for another $200 it was much better to just get the Series X. It was different power, and even here, no, they very clearly state there is no in-game difference in frame rates. So the Series S, in my opinion, wasn't good value, even though the price tag appeared to be. And it made more sense to get the $499 Xbox Series X if you could get one. So, and even the Series S sold out and was scalped. People bought the scalped version of the Series S for, I don't know, $700 at one stage. So it's pretty insane. And obviously, I think people are going to be interested in this. Steven says, I'm a dad too. That's why I like Switch and now so excited for the deck. It allows me to sneak in gaming sessions. Ha ha ha. Well, one thing I got to say, like with a portable PC game system at home is always like this feeling, well, should I play it on the actual PC, you know, with your RTX 3080, 3090, 3070 or whatever, or should I just play it on a little handheld? And that's really up to the person to decide. Like, you won't know until you actually get this thing, and then you're going like, should I really be playing this at 720p, or should I just go to my PC and play it? So these are questions, like if you're undecided at the moment, these are questions that you're going to have to think about before you buy one. But of course, like if you're somebody who can sell it really easily, then there's no harm in getting one and just trying it out. If you don't like it, go and sell it. I don't think you're going to lose too much money on it, to be quite honest. Cadency, can I hook it to a monitor and hook a keyboard and mouse and play? Yes, you can. You can get a dock with it, and you can hook a keyboard and mouse and play with it. And then it has SteamOS, but apparently SteamOS is very close to what it looks like on Windows. You can even install stuff from Windows. We'll get into all of that in just a second. But yes, you can do most things that you can do with a Windows PC. Confirmed SK, they need to save space in that form factor. That tells me it will be soldered. Well, I will say that the GPD Win had a removable SSD on the GPD Win 2 anyway. So yes, you're probably right. It's probably soldered, but it's not really that small. This thing is going to be bigger than the Switch. It's bigger than pretty much all of the portable systems out there. I think there's plenty of room on that thing, which is why I'm not sure if they actually have a port where you can where you can actually take out the SSD. So it's not the space that is the issue, but yeah, you could be right that they're just going to solder that on. I think mostly because they don't want people to change it out. Jack Lim, is that the GPD Win we wanted? Hello, Jack. So is that the GPD Win we wanted? So that is kind of hard to. I mean, the GPD Win. Did you like the GPD Win? For me, I thought the GPD Win 2 model had nice ergonomics, or nice. It had a nice design to it. I thought that was fine. I think that was very underpowered. I think the Intel CPU in there wasn't capable enough to play the vast majority of the games that you had. I think this is a little bit better. It's got 1.8 teraflops, so a lot of the games that came out for around about like the mid PS4 generation are going to work okay for this. So yeah, I think this is a better portable system. And obviously it would be nice to get 3-4 teraflops, but that's not going to happen for a while to get it on a system like this. So getting 2 teraflops, 720p screen, I think that this is okay. For us who reside in Malaysia, how are you going to pre-order Jim? Well, the thing is, I may not even get one. So because I have a lot of Switch games at the moment, I am excited for it. And so the thing is, like, for me, I think I talked a little bit about it before. I did ramble about it. It's just having too many systems that is the problem, and not having enough time to use them all. So while I would really, really like this, just having the time to actually play it, because I don't even have enough time between the PC and Switch right now. But yeah, this is really exciting, this thing. But you know, finding the time to actually play this would be another thing. Can I bank on a game like Battlefield 2042 to be supported out of the gate? Or do Steam games need to have an additional SteamOS support patch? No, they don't. So they run something called Proton, which immediately allows these Windows games to be played on Linux OS-based systems like SteamOS. So you wouldn't really have to do anything. It'd all work in the background. There may be some incompatibilities that devs have to work out, but in general, most of these games, you're not going to be able to, you don't need to do anything. Any differences in thermals between eMMC versus, yep, absolutely. eMCC, it'll be cooler. NVMe is hotter. Okay, guys? It's so simple, like, I would almost say it could be like 10-15 degrees warmer. Now, I mean, I don't have the system to test that out, but I played with eMMC systems before, like a Switch, and I played with SSD systems, and you can go and touch your own SSD inside your system, your NVMe. They all have heat sinks, so they get hot. So this could get hot. There may be something inside like a heatsink or a fan or whatnot to keep it cool. My guess is that it will be close to ANEO. So I think the ANEO could be was like about 40, 45 degrees, something along those lines. So I don't think it's going to get extremely hot. But if you're somebody who can notice the difference for, say, like a Vita, which runs extremely cool, versus, say, a Switch, which runs a little bit hotter, but still perfectly usable, or a GPD Win, which would get hotter.
Tools now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the SSD is going to run hot, and go around and ask people. Say like I know the Fox, and that's PHAWX. He runs a channel about GPD wins and retro gaming handhelds. He can tell you quite easily like how it feels to play with an SSD system, or just touch your NVMe SSD in your PC. Jacqueline, I don't like the Win 2 due to heat. Exactly right. So I had the prototype Win 2, and they had a different SSD in there, and they replaced that with another SSD for the retail. So I believe that they did get the SSD temps down a little bit, but for that prototype, it was pretty ugly. Like I didn't have a temp on it, but my hands were sweating after like 10 minutes. Like literally, like it wasn't good. Not if you came from, say, like a Vita. But it's I don't think that should be a reason to not pre-order this, because you're not going to be able to get one by the time you find out if it's actually hot or not. Okay, so if you want one, pre-order it, but watch out like for reviews and things like that that talk about heat later on. Okay. If Steam is backing this, shouldn't really be worried. The Phison SSD in Win 2, okay, but the Phison SSD was just for the prototype version. I think they put in another SSD. There were a couple of other brands that they put in for the retail SSD, retail Win 2. Is this thing going to be loud? No. Even though it's going to have smaller fans, this runs it pretty similar to the Switch. The Switch is very small already. I can't really hear the fan on the Switch. I don't think this is going to be that bad, though you may want to compare with like the ANEO because it's running very similar. So if the ANEO, if there's like, I guess, if you watch the ANEO reviews, I don't think they said that it was very loud, so I think it should be okay. This will be the most powerful system out there. I don't believe the ANEO runs at 1.6 teraflops. All right, so we've been on this screen with the prices for a while. Let me quickly go over the software here, and then we will get to the tech specs, because I think the tech specs are more interesting. So there are things like, okay, so this is your home screen. So it'll be a bit like Big Picture. All the Steam features you'd expect: Steam chat, cloud saves, notifications, remote play, store, community, all of that sort of thing. That makes sense. This is cool. This has got more video on it, so maybe we'll just leave here for a second. Looks like they're playing Baldur's Gate 3. But you can see like the icons are quite small, like at the bottom there. So this is something that, is this going to be comfortable for you to play? And I played some games with really, really small UIs, which is not comfortable. But I believe that at least for PC games, you will be able to adjust those settings. I'm sure you're going to be able to adjust the UI for something like a Baldur's Gate, though it may not be with every game, right? Is this thing going to be loud? No, I've already answered that. Mike Jacoby, is the SSD soldered or just hard to get to? Okay, we don't have any information on whether the SSD is soldered, but if I was to guess, because they have a 512GB version and a 256, I believe it would probably be soldered. Because then if you you could easily just get the 256 and put in a bigger SSD yourself. Then they wouldn't be able to sell the 512, or there'd be no reason to buy the 512. So that's why I believe it's soldered, but obviously I don't know. Your Steam library anywhere. Steam just works on deck. Okay. So, you know, if it was me, I wouldn't bother with Windows OS on this if most of the games are going to run on SteamOS anyways. And I think the SteamOS is going to do a pretty good job of like just getting you in the game and playing them. Because that's what you really want. You want like instant sort of gaming. And there's going to be a lot of cool things like that on SteamOS. Like there'll be quick resume. You're going to be able to like get in and out of your games really quickly, which you may not get if you install Windows on it. So this is Nino Kuni. And honestly, like a lot of the JRPGs are going to be really comfortable to play it on this. And for me, I've got Dragon's Quest 11 on Switch. And I prefer portable, you know, a couple of hours before bed, for example, play that, rather than playing it on Xbox Game Pass on my PC. Like, I could still do it just fine. It's like really no issue. It's really like a first world problem type thing, where, oh, should I play it on my super duper hardware or another super duper luxury handheld? Like, I think either one is fine. Like, if you have either one and you're not sure whether to get this or not, your system is perfectly fine. Like, don't get jealous or envy that you don't have this system. It's this cool system, and you should definitely, like, if you have a chance to try it out and play it, like, you know, but you don't it's not an absolute necessity to get this. A new Steam operating system. Okay. Would this be a good device to run Game Pass? Oh my goodness. Okay, well, gosh, that's a really difficult question because Xbox, I'm sure you'll be able to do it. Okay. However, the way that Xbox Game Pass is, or the Xbox app, with all of the DRM and all of that sort of thing, that, yeah, I'd be a little bit less. I don't know how to put it. Like, okay, very simple thing to is like, there's so much DRM, and you can't actually access any of the folders and all of that sort of stuff with if you put a Windows game. It's just very annoying. So yeah, if you want to go down that route, that's fine. But there may be things like later on that could be problematic that you don't foresee. I'm probably making a mess of explaining this, but I'll give you an example. So something happened with my PC, and so I did a reinstall. So I reinstalled Windows, and then I had all my Xbox Game Pass games on another SSD. But after I did my fresh install of Windows, I wasn't able to access all of my games on Xbox Game Pass because those were locked away on another OS. So I had to go and delete everything manually, and had to format the entire drive, basically. So I lost all of my Xbox Game Pass games. The DRM is so difficult to get into. It's not a simple matter of just like, show hidden files or give permission to somebody. It's very annoying. The Windows system is very annoying in terms of like, in terms of permissions and stuff. So it's a bit annoying. So yeah, you could probably run Game Pass on it. I don't think you'd be without enough games on Steam. And so if you wanted to install Game Pass, you could probably do it. But you'll have to be careful with like, okay, I installed this game. Now I stop playing it. Okay, I want to delete this game before I forget about it. And lose too much dead space to like Xbox Game Pass stuff. I probably butchered all of that sort of thing. I'm just a bit, yeah. Xbox Game Pass and DRM like is really annoying. All right, so let's talk about the tech specs of this. Now, in terms of ergonomics, at first I thought, wow, okay, this is a different button layout. Wow. Like, I'm not sure this is going to be, it doesn't look great to me. However, looks is different to actually functionality. And I think function-wise, this is perfectly fine because everything is going around in this sort of thumb semicircle. So I think you're going to be able to access everything pretty nicely. And on the other side, you're going to be able to access this really nice. This is really situated for, or mainly used for people who like first-person shooter games with first-person view. So this is, I guess, made for those type of games where the buttons aren't as important as this thumbstick. I think so. If you're someone who likes the first-person shooters, this is really the control scheme of why this system was made. It's made for the vast majority of like first-person shooter games. Now, obviously, this will be just fine playing with action games, although I will note that this A, B, X, Y buttons are a little bit close to the edge, so maybe you'd get a little bit tired from holding it and then having your thumb so far out and pressing that. Well, I'm used to this being the A button, but on the PlayStation, there's a circle button. I think on the Xbox is like the B button. I think it's the B button. On the Xbox. So yeah, it's pretty wide out there. I don't think D-pad is such an issue. Nobody uses D-pad anymore unless you're playing emulators and ROMs and stuff. So really, the D-pad most of the time these days is used for options and things. I think that's fine where it is. And of course, you got the trackpad, which is super cool. And out of the way as well. Like, you're not going to be touching that trackpad where your thumbs and that are. And I thought it was a little bit top heavy, like with all of the buttons at the top. So that's going to really depend on how far to the top it is, and it looks really close to the top. I think it should be okay. Like, it's definitely going to be quite nice to hold in the hand, and it's got these grooves. This is the this cross section shot. So it's going to be nice to hold with that little bit extra there. But of course, it's not as beautiful in terms of industrial design as, say, like a Vita is, for example, where they weren't too focused on how it feels to hold for the Vita. They're more focused on what it looks like for marketing purposes, whereas say like a Steam Deck is going to function. Maybe you feel more comfortable to hold this type of thing. One thing with all of these systems is like the straight edge on these systems. And sometimes when I hold controllers with a straight edge, I almost feel like my hands get a little bit tired, because if you just place your hands and arms naturally, they're at 45 degrees. So I almost sometimes feel like controllers with straight edges like this, or the Switch, or the GameCube controller, for example, was a terrible controller because of the straight edge. So I always feel like controllers where they're like 45 degrees angles, like a PlayStation controller, is more comfortable to hold than say something with a straight edge. But of course, it's something like pretty minor. Most people are not going to notice that much. It's got some cool R4, R5, L4, L5 buttons on the back that you can map. A lot of PC games have lots of buttons and things, so that's kind of cool. Okay, so this is a really important section that I'm about 2 hours into my stream and finally talking about it now. I will put some sort of marker on this so that other people can get to this section easier. But we're finally at the tech specs of this. All right. Compute, processor, AMD APU. This is a Zen 2 4-core 8-thread CPU. This is going to be essentially, at first, I thought this was going to be like the Zen 2 APUs that they brought out, the Zen APUs. But it has 8 RDNA2 compute units, so that's not actually it. So this is a custom-built CPU or APU for Steam, which is really cool. They have not released this. This is new processor that nobody else has. And so the CPU Zen 2 4-core 8-thread is going to be okay. I think if you're asking for 8-core 16 threads, in terms of for gaming, not for PS4 games, which is what this kind of system is more for. So I think you're fine. I think for future games that need 8-core 16 threads, you're going to need more GPU power anyway, okay? So if you're the type of person who wants to call for 8-core 16 threads, you probably won't really use that for this GPU power. So I think the CPU and GPU are kind of aligned well here. So it says here, it runs at 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz. So it's just your standard mobile processor with a lower base clock and some higher boost clocks to get you to those points, which is perfectly fine. Most of like if you look at, say, desktop processors anyways, they only boost to that's like the high boost at certain points. So most of the time they're going to be running less than 3.5 gigahertz. They can't really run 3.5 straight, like for continuously for 2 hours. Even say like something Intel desktop, they have something called a TAU or a TAU, right? And then you can only boost that for like, I don't know, 200 seconds or whatever it is, which is more than okay for most of the games. And when you look at benchmarks and things, it doesn't make a big difference. Most of the time, you're going to be GPU limited than CPU limited. It says here up to 448 gigaflops FP32. So I'm not sure exactly what they mean by this. Because normally are they saying that this is almost like a Nintendo Switch? So I guess yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that. So GPU though, 8 RDNA2 compute units. Now a lot of the Zen APUs that are about to be released, I think, and they already have for some OEM laptops or OEM desktops, they have Vega units. Okay, so the Vega units are, well, quite old. We've had them for quite a while. We had them with the previous generation as well, the 3000 series or the 3000G. I think it was a 3200G and the 3400G. They were Vega units. The Cezanne, the 4000 units are also Vega. So this is the first time we're getting RDNA2 compute units in there. Now, what's really the difference between Vega and RDNA2? I think there is there is a difference, but it's not going to be as big as people initially thought, because if you look at RDNA and RDNA2, 5700 XT versus 6700 XT, the 5700 XT has 40 compute units. The 6700 XT also has 40 compute units. And so the 6700 XT has infinity cache, whereas the 5700 XT doesn't. And also it's clocked higher. So the 6700 XT clocks at 2.5 gigahertz, whereas the 5700 XT, I believe, was about like 1.8 or 2 gigahertz. So there was about a 20% actual performance difference between the 5700 XT and the 6700 XT. A lot of those gains were from that higher clock speed and also the infinity cache. So I think RDNA 1 and RDNA 2 was very similar. I think Vega and RDNA, there was a bit of an architectural or IPC increase. So I think overall, maybe you'd get like 10% performance improvement from that Vega to RDNA 2. And that's just really off the top of my head and a guess. But I think either way, they've already listed that you're going to get about 1.6 teraflops of this at 1.6 gigahertz. And obviously that's going to be running at 15 watts. So I think that is pretty exciting. If you want to run AAA games, 720p AAA games, then you would probably want to be like playing with that 1.6 teraflops, and then you'd be trying to boost your system to 15 watts to get it to run at 1.6 teraflops. But you could also play it at like say 4 or 7 watts, and then you'd be able to play other games very comfortably with lots more battery life. Let me answer some questions before I get into the next section of the tech specs. Single CCX Zen 2, yeah, it is single CCX, so 4-core 8 threads. Not much more to say other than that, really. I mean, you'd have to go because Zen 2, if you have a dual CCX, so it'd be like 2 4-core 8 threads, right? So the 8-core 16 threads for the Zen 2 was dual CCX, whereas now Zen 3, 1 CCX is 8-core 16 thread, and then 2 would be the 16-core 32 threads of the 5950X. Jacqueline, how do you think about the benchmark of Alder Lake outperforming 5950X? Well, that's pretty much another topic, and I did quickly look at it, but there was some sort of specs for that, and the benchmark was really just a forum post from this guy who says that it will outperform the 5950X, and I don't know that I guess it will, but 5950X was last year, and then AMD is probably going to come out with something again at the end of the year with their 3D cache. So it's really hard to say, like, Alder Lake will be an improvement on the 5950X because also this is 8-core. This is 8-core big threads. This is 8 cores of 8 big cores and 8 little cores. That's really hard to say what's going to happen with all of that. But if the benchmark is true, it looks like it beats that 5950X in multi-performance. So I think we need a little bit more information there. It's really just one forum post. We need like some screenshots of benchmark performances and things like that. Zach Nation says, wonder how painful it'd be to try and play Tarkov. Why is that exactly? Because it's an online shooter. You have to start with a Windows install. Zach Nations, oh yeah, for sure. Zach Nations more or less meant this APU. Mark Jacoby, I imagine you could get away with a 720p. Not sure how playable Tarkov is at that res. Yeah, so the last 5-10 minutes, I had a lot of noises and distractions outside. So I'm finding it a little bit hard to talk with so many noises. Maybe you're not hearing it from the Nvidia broadcast. But yeah. Hopefully the noises will go away in a second. Confirmed SK, 8 cores and 24 threads. What's that exactly? I don't know what's 8 cores and 24 threads. James says, will the Steam Deck be able to utilize AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution technology? 100% it will. I mean, they haven't said, but this is perfect for it. The FSR is perfect for it, and I would be astonished if it could not work on this. And there's no reason why not, because it works on APUs. FSR works on APUs, and it works on all of the existing APUs, and it works on RDNA desktop cards. So I think FSR will work on this. It's only a matter of developers implementing FSR into their games. But if it works with APUs and other AMD cards, it's going to work for this. So yeah, it's going to be great. You're going to be able to play this with the quality setting or the ultra quality setting, and you're not really going to notice much, and you're going to get like a 20-30% boost in performance, get over 60 FPS in many games. This is what FSR was made for. This is why people are talking about DLSS on Switch. So I'm sure FSR will feature prominently on this Steam Deck, and it's going to be great for this Steam Deck going forward. 8 compute unit RDNA2 LPDDR5 1500 is probably pretty fast, and that's a good segue into the next part of the tech specs. So I'll get back into the tech specs. And the RAM is 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM, 5500 mega transfers per second. Now, I think there are a few videos. I think Tech Potato made a video. He's the guy from Anantech. His name is Dr. Ian. Just lost his. Sorry, Ian, but I lost his last name for a second. But he had a good video. I didn't actually watch it because I roughly knew what it was about anyway. It was about like mega transfers per second versus calling something megahertz. And Linus called the RAM megahertz, which is not technically correct. So a lot of people say like, oh, I've got DDR4 3200 megahertz memory. And I've stopped saying that. I don't think I really said that all that often. A lot of noise in the background. But yeah, so for DDR4 3200, your memory is running at 1600 megahertz. You got 2 sticks of it, and then that's operating at 3200 megahertz, but the transfer speed is 3200 mega transfer per second. So this is what's happening here. I'm surprised it's 5500 mega transfers per second. So I wonder how that works. I guess that would be like 2250 megahertz per stick, I guess. But yeah, DDR5, that's awesome, because I believe on your previous APUs, your Zen APUs, you're running at DDR4 or DDR4 memory. So yeah, you could get like, 4800 mega transfer a second, but this is next level, I guess you could say. This is 5500. So this is going to be super fast. This is going to be great. It's not quite at the performance of your GDDR6X, but this is going to be better than any APU that you've had in the past. And yes, it does make a huge difference, okay, the RAM speed, because now you don't have GDDR6 or VRAM. You're going to be loading everything up onto this storage, the system RAM. So you really need to keep the system RAM speeds as high as you can go, which makes APUs run faster. And there are lots of tests done, like you don't want to have a single stick of this. You need to have dual sticks, and you want the fastest possible system RAM that you can get for these APUs. Oh yeah, and I did have an APU. I had the 2400G, and I had it running on 1 stick of RAM because I was just building it for my parents, and they were just going to use it as a browser. So I just had 1 stick, and I did some testing on it. And if you lose half of the memory speed, I was getting like maybe 30-40% less performance in games. That's how bad it is. So you got to keep that system RAM speed up to get the maximum performance in your Steam Deck. Okay, your storage is 64 gigabytes of eMMC, PCIe Gen 2, 1 lane, 256 gigabytes, NVMe SSD, PCIe Gen 3. Now this is really interesting. I didn't notice this before. It says here 512 gigabytes of high-speed NVMe SSD, PCIe Gen 3, 4 lanes. So this is a different spec SSD to the 256 gigabyte NVMe SSD. And there are different types of NVMe SSDs. So even though both are Gen 3s, this one looks like it performs faster. I think there were some really cheap, a lot cheaper ones a lot cheaper NVMe SSDs, and then you have like the next level Gen 3 SSDs. And I think the top end Gen 3 was about 3.5. Let me get this. I think it was about 3.5 gigabytes per second or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. And then you could obviously get other NVMe SSDs that were doing like about 2 gigabytes per second or less. So that's probably where this is at. All models include high-speed micro SD card slots. And I think you're probably going to want to get like a big micro SD card, like 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte to put in and put all your other little games on there. Okay. I'm not really going to go over the controls and input that much because you can see that all for yourself. Thumbsticks, the haptics, there's trackpads. I did feel like those trackpads were a little bit small, but I guess they're just putting in something there that fits the actual system there, so it is what it is, right? Gyro is 6-axis IMU. I think this is really interesting. I guess some games are using gyros from the PS4 controller or Xbox controller, so maybe that's why this is in there as well. And it seems like it's a fairly cheap thing that they include pretty much for any controller these days. All right, let's talk a little bit about the display. It says here the resolution is 1280 by 800 pixels. This will be 10% or need 10% more performance than a 720p screen, or roughly 10% more. And I think this is a good resolution for the APU or the processor that you're getting. So obviously, the holy grail for me is a 1080p 4 teraflop processor, but I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon, at least not in an APU. I thought maybe we would get that with because we were getting Xbox Series X's and PlayStation 5s. They have all these monster APUs in there. I thought we might be able to get something like that for our PCs, but it seems like we're not really there yet. And even with Cezanne, and even with the next, I can't remember exactly what the code name was for the next generation, we're probably still not at that stage. We're going to get 4 teraflops on an APU, and a low-powered version, right? Like, obviously, the Xbox Series X version is not low-powered, but we're not at that stage. We're getting a mobile processor with 4 teraflops. So this is as good as it gets for the time being in terms of having the most powerful processor. Now, while I'm here, like, why not let's go and have a look at the Neo specs. Okay, so this is also a 7-inch 1280 by 800 screen, 76% NTSC. Well, it would be really interesting to see like what the display in terms of the NTSC, because it'd be nicer to get something closer to like say 90%. Now it's got here a Ryzen 5 4500U CPU with Radeon RX Vega 6. Now, if it's Vega 6, we're looking at around like say around 1 teraflop, I believe. I don't know exactly, but I would believe that the Vega 6 would probably be around 1. Maybe you guys can let me know in the chat if you know what the Vega 6 off the top of your head, or you're able to do a search for it, how powerful this Vega 6 is. But I believe it'd probably be around like 1 teraflop. The Ryzen 5 4500U would probably be around 1 teraflop. So immediately you're getting a more powerful handheld for this system, because this is at 1.6 teraflops. So there's not too much else to say with this other system here. It's got here 7-inch diagonal, 400 nits typical, 60 hertz refresh rate, touch enable, yes, ambient light sensor. So all that good stuff. It's got Bluetooth. So if you're somebody who was complaining about why the Switch doesn't have Bluetooth, well, there you go. It's on the Steam Deck. Wi-Fi looks like it's pretty good. It's got Wi-Fi AC enabled. Audio is going to be basically like audio laptop speakers. It's funny because like all of these laptops, they always talk about how they have really impressive audio. I don't think we're really at that stage yet because this is the type of thing where it's physically not possible, right? You need some physical space for that audio. Otherwise, yeah, they always try to talk up the audio, but every time you end up getting the system, it's always more or less about the same. Oh, thank you, confirmed SK. 845 gigaflops for Vega 6. Thank you. So yeah, roughly about 1 teraflop. But yeah, 845 is pretty nice. You know, it's pretty nice. But this is going to be much better. And that's to do with the fact that Steam is a bigger company than ANEO. And they can probably get access to specially made APUs. So they can order a bigger supply or amount of them. They can work with AMD to get something custom built. So they could be a partner with AMD to get this APU built. Remember, this is the first RDNA2 APU that is out there. So this is all pretty exciting stuff, honestly. Trojan ARC says, you got games on your phone. No kid, I got a Steam Deck. Well, that's going to be hard to put in your pocket though. I did miss a question back here. Steven says, do you think we'll see other SIs making their own versions of the hardware? Are you talking about other system manufacturers? Say, for example, like an ANEO type of manufacturer making their own? Yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't. However, this processor, this AMD APU is custom built for Steam, and so I guess you could almost say this is kind of exclusive to them for a while. Whereas, say, like a ANEO or a GPD Win, they're still looking for retail products that AMD or Intel put out onto the market. So like, but maybe they'll have special access to get a certain amount of them. Maybe GPD Win do an order. Hey, like, can I get 10,000 of these, for example? So maybe that's what they do. Whereas this one feels like, okay, they are actually working with AMD, like Xbox or PlayStation 5 work with the with AMD to get something custom built. So what else is here? Okay. Okay, so obviously you got the headphone jack. It's got dual microphones, which is pretty cool. And why don't they have a webcam? I know webcams are pretty shitty. I know Linus made a video about shitty webcams, but why don't they just put a webcam? Like, how else are you going to do streaming? You should be able to, you know, have a minimal function to be able to do streaming on this. I think it's missing a webcam. Maybe you can just plug it into the USB-C port at the top. Okay, this is important. Power. Okay, input 40 watts USB Type-C power PD3 power supply. It says here it's got 40 watt hour battery. Now, how big is the battery on the ANEO? 47 watts. But yeah, it says here 2 to 8 hours of gameplay. Well, that's pretty simple. Is that actually, they're claiming 2 hours. So if we look here, the APU power is 15 watts. So yes, you will be able to get 2 hours of this, maybe 2.5 hours. Probably not, because you got to run some stuff in the background as well. And of course, your battery may get worse as time goes on. I think it's a safe bet for them to say 2 hours to 8 hours. Obviously, with 8 hours, you're going to have to reduce your power settings for this. So actually, I hope like they make something in the SteamOS where you have a slider where you can just adjust your APU power, and then that's going to give you the required GPU processing power. for that. I hope that's all kind of like built into the system. So if you want, okay, you're just going to adjust your power slider down to 7 watts to play something else where you don't need as much power. And if you really need it for, say, like Call of Duty Warzone, then you crank it up to 15 watts. Expansion, MicroSD. Yep, so you know all about that. External connectivity for controllers and displays. I don't think anyone's going to connect an 8K 60 Hertz, but it can be done. I think most people are just going to connect a 1080p monitor. I think that would be pretty ideal if you have a spare 1080p monitor lying around to connect that with. And also, this would also be interesting as like, I guess you're going to have to do what you do with the Switch as well, and to plug the headphone jack into some speakers to get your sound out that way. Unless it all comes out of USB, and then you're going to have like an audio out from your monitor to your speakers. So that's probably how it's going to work. Size and weight, 700 grams. This thing is heavy. Let's see how heavy the Switch is. So this is about 300 grams. Sorry, is that right? 6.66 pounds. Wait. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is about right. So it says here, Valve Steam Deck. They already knew that I was going to talk about this Valve Steam. Valve Steam Deck is almost double the weight of Nintendo Switch. The Switch is not exactly heavy anyways. This is going to be heavier though. This is going to be somewhere in between, like, this might be like an iPad mini. So let's have a look at the iPad mini weight. Whoops. Oh, 10. Why don't they just have the same units? 300 grams. Oh, okay. So this is really heavy then. What about an iPad? iPad Air? I think that. But I think the iPad. Okay, this is going to be heavier than the iPad Air. So I have an iPad Air, and I believe the iPad Pro at 11 inches will probably be about the same weight as this anyway. So 700 grams for this is pretty heavy. Where is it? 700 grams is pretty heavy. Okay, so there's going to be an official dock. Let's check out this dock and the inputs. USB-C cable to Steam Deck. Okay, makes sense. DisplayPort 1.4. Impressive. That is very impressive. HDMI 2. Now that's really cool. Dual screens. So I think, you know, they have developers in mind for something like this. Most developers, most people who are doing work, they want 2 screens. And actually, you know, this could be good for content creators on the go as well. You could put this into your deck, edit a video very quickly, and then be able to put that out onto YouTube. Power in. So I'm not exactly sure what this power in means, because you already have a USB-C cable to Steam Deck. So we'll have to find out more why you'd want that. I'm guessing that's just a USB-C, so you could just daisy chain things. You have Ethernet, very important, as Nintendo found out 4 years later. USB 3.1, very cool. And 2 USB-C 2s for obviously plugging in controllers and that sort of thing. So very good dock, to be honest. I don't really know what is really missing here besides a audio out. I think it could have done with another audio out. And I think that's about really all the ports that you really need. If you guys can think of any other ports. Okay, so keyboard and mouse, that could be 2. And then you have 1 more. So that could be like a hard drive. So it's actually a little bit tight with 3. but you could daisy chain it. So you've got power input, USB-C, power delivery, pass-through input. You'd be able to plug in something else, and if you needed more ports. Okay, so let's get back to the chat here, and then I'll get onto this last article, which is what I want to go through, which is talking about if you have SteamOS and it's running Linux, then how do you play all of your Windows games? So this article is going to go through how it does that, and it does it through Proton. But let me go through the chat first. Where are we? Okay, you got games on your phone. Okay, I wonder if Win 11 would install. Yes, you can install Windows 11, though if you're not playing games like PUBG and that sort of thing, you probably wouldn't need Windows 11. So what I talked about earlier on in my chat was, earlier on this video, was that if you install a brand new Windows or operating system on top, with you're going to have drivers for everything for this, like trackpads or joysticks and buttons and all of that sort of thing on Windows. So they would have to bring, Valve would have to bring something out to make sure it works properly on Windows 11. But theoretically, of course, you can install Windows 11 because the internals of this is a PC, and it would be as simple as like plugging in your USB stick with Windows 11 install on it, and then just running that. Do you think the 64GB version is worth it only with eMMC storage? So, hello Ray Tracing Revolution. So I talked about this earlier on, but I'm happy to repeat it because I think this is a really important point, is the 64GB version does have a few advantages, like it's going to be a little bit cooler because it's running that eMMC storage as opposed to NVMe. But overall, if you want the 64GB version, you should be somebody who knows exactly what they're doing with this, and that you're only really going to be playing games that don't require an SSD or even like a hard. I think maybe the eMMC would be comparable to a hard drive, but there'll be games like, say, for example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla prefers an SSD, or Cyberpunk 2077 prefers an SSD. So if you know you're not going to be playing those games, I think the 64GB version could be okay if you're somebody who's thinking about, okay, I've got all of these old Steam games that I want to play, and I'm definitely not interested in Cyberpunk 2077. So that would be a system you could get, because it's like $200 more. So this one is $400, and then the 512 is another $200 more. So there is a reason there for the 64GB model to exist, other than just marketing and stuff. I think there are tons of games on Steam, tons that you could play, and if those are the type of games that you want to play, I think the 64GB is fine. There's tons. There's so many like strategy games, visual novels, JRPGs. You don't have to play the latest AAA games things on this because there's so many other games on the system or on the Steam store. Trojan ARC. Oh, and also, let me say that most of these games from the PS4 era were loaded onto system RAM anyway, so it's going to be fine. They're going to run just fine on that eMMC storage. Okay.
Brooks, Birdwing, and the Moth, a
Okay.
Dancy Fly, Dung Beetle,
Okay.
a Centipede, Pillbug. This one is, I caught it new.
Okay. I'm just playing Animal Crossing. What was I going to say? Yeah, so then the other issue, of course, is like, okay, you're not going to install Call of Duty Warzone on 64GB because you need 100 or 200GB. You're not going to play Microsoft Flight Simulator on this thing because you need 200GB. So really, you have to know what type of gamer you are to get that 64GB version. If you're not sure, if you're somebody who thinks, hey, I want to play everything, you don't want to get the 64GB version, you want to get the 512. Trojan ARC. Yes, they said you can cap frames to increase the battery life. Yeah, so in the tech specs, it says 4 watts to 15 watts. So I'm really hoping for a really easy to use slider somewhere on that SteamOS where you can just slide 4 watts to 15 watts. and then let the GPU sort out like how much power or performance you get from that. That's really the easiest way they should, and that's the thing that's what they should do on that system. Okay, Mike Jacoby says, seems like an attack at Microsoft to get game developers to target Linux more, assuming it takes off. Seems like an attack at Microsoft. Seems like an attack. I guess. Well, not really, because if so they're going to be using this thing, SteamOS and Proton, as you can see there in my browser. And so Proton is basically running your Windows version. So the developers are still going to be developing their Windows version. The Proton will take care of it and sort of on the fly port it to SteamOS or Linux. So all the developers are going to be making games for Microsoft anyway. I don't think Steam cares at the moment where people are developing the games for anymore. They at first there was this period, I think around Steam machines and when SteamOS came out, where there was a little bit of fear because at the time Microsoft has said they were going to charge everybody to put to put whatever they develop onto their Windows App Store. So there was this fear that Microsoft would get a cut of whatever Steam was going to get. And so I feel like that was the reason why they decided to make SteamOS and Steam machines and that sort of thing, to kind of like get away from the Microsoft ecosystem and get some sort of not put all their eggs in one basket under the Windows Store. At least have something on the side that it's like their backup plan. So I don't think they're attacking Microsoft, but I will say that they're trying to drive people to the Steam store with this thing. If you have the Steam store installed onto this and you're just running SteamOS, you're not as likely to go and use the other game stores unless, of course, you have a reason to, like you got Game Pass on there and you want to install Game Pass on your, then you'd go and use Game Pass. But if this is your predominant store, if this is a thing that you see, kind of like PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, you're just going to use that store. And so they kind of try putting that store right in front of people and try to get people to use the store that way. So I think this is a good strategy from Valve. SPDIF, maybe. Okay, I've only heard of this, so I don't exactly know what SPDIF. Are you talking about the RCA or the red, yellow, white, like this? I don't think they're going to go back to that. Are you talking about digital audio, maybe? It doesn't look like it from their dock. So if you look back at there's no SPDIF in their dock or on their handheld digital audio. It is just going to be HDMI 2 on this and also Bluetooth audio, which is pretty good, to be honest. Like Bluetooth audio is even better than the 3.5mm jack. And they also have a 3.5mm jack for audio here. Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, so the iGPU in the Ryzen 7 5800U is 512 SPs, streaming processors, 8 Vega compute units, 2000 MHz, and is 2 teraflops. Okay, only supports up to LPDDR4. Okay, so that's Vega compute units, and then also that one, I don't know how much power you need. I don't remember if it was like 15 watts or 18 watts. So I think they wanted to go with the RDNA2. I'm sorry. Obviously, it's the latest architecture. And hey, RDNA2, maybe you get some. I don't know if you're going to get ray tracing on this. They didn't say, so I guess not. and you probably wouldn't need ray tracing on this anyways. But there'll be other things that with the RDNA2 architecture they can utilize. And that's probably going too deep. I'd probably need to do a bit of research to find out like what's the difference between RDNA2 and RDNA1. So don't want to get into that. But yeah, it's 2 teraflops on that 5800U, but it's probably more for laptops and things because even with laptops, you can play it tethered, right, to the power supply. So you're not running off the battery. So if you were to run, say, like 20 watts on your laptop, then it's going to run down really quickly. So I think that's probably why. And also RDNA2, maybe it's a little bit more power efficient as well. Can Steam Deck use an external hard disk? I would say most likely yes, because one, they said it's going to be a PC. And two, you've got USB ports and USB-C ports. So yes, you should be able to use an external hard disk. However, do you really want to dangle the USB hard disk off your portable handheld? I think you'd most likely be using it for your deck. Sorry, I keep saying deck, dock. Your dock. And I think the New Zealanders might have a bit of trouble saying deck all the time, the Steam Deck. Because, as you know, they like to say their A's are the E's and the E's are their I's and their I's are their... Yeah. So, really interesting to see how they pronounce the Steam Deck. Okay. Any New Zealanders out there, like any subscribers out there, that let me know how you're going to pronounce that. Where am I? Where am I? Can Steam Deck use an external hard disk? I think so. You've got this, and it's going to be like a PC. It's made for developers as well who want to have dual screens, want to develop stuff on the Steam Deck as well. So I think, yeah, you'll be able to use an external hard disk. Greg, hello. Thank you for joining us on this Steam Deck live stream. Trojan ARC Elgato entered the chat. Okay, so this is a good time for me to go over this Windows Central article about the Steam Deck, SteamOS, how you're going to be able to play all of these Windows games on SteamOS. And the way they do it is with Proton. So breaking down what you can expect from the Steam Deck, and it's not Windows software. Okay, so I'm not going to read through the entire article. I will point out a few things, I guess. And I'll have to just quickly read it first myself. But it says here, the Steam Deck is very much a handheld PC in the vein of something like GPD Win devices, but it doesn't run Windows 10 or Windows 11, at least not out of the box. You're getting SteamOS and Proton, terms which some of you may be familiar with, but to others it might be foreign. This doesn't run Windows, but you can run a Windows game on it confused. That's what we're here for. Now, they said already in the IGM video and also in the Steam website or Steam Deck website that you're able to install another operating system on top of this if you want. So the only thing is that whether all of these buttons and things and drivers for those will come immediately or whether they'll come later on if there's enough requests for it. So that's the only issue there. If you wanted to install Windows 10 and Windows 11, you can. What is SteamOS and Proton? So the Steam Deck isn't Valve's first attempt at a piece of gaming hardware. Remember Steam machines? No, probably not. The Steam machine was Valve's first attempt at a games console, and it ran its own software called SteamOS. There's nothing magical about the hardware. There's nothing magical about the Steam Deck. Steam machines were PCs that ran a different operating system. The Steam Deck is a PC that runs a different operating system, specifically Linux. Steam Deck will ship with SteamOS 3. Which according to Valve is an Arch-based Linux distro with a KDE Plasma desktop environment. If that means nothing to you, don't worry, but remember the Linux part. What about Proton then? Proton is a compatibility layer that lives within Steam and has been around for quite some time. If you run Steam on Linux right now, you have access to Proton. What Proton does, in its simplest terms, is allow you to run Windows-only games on Linux gaming PCs. So, if you tab out of this Steam Big Picture or Steam handheld operating system, you will get Windows, or essentially almost like a Windows interface. So a lot of it will, we saw it with, maybe I can get back in here and then just quick. I don't know if he tabs out of this in this case. So as you can see here, he tabs out of it and he goes into a browser. You got like icons at the bottom, kind of like Windows. So in the background, it's almost like a Windows system, although it's just still Linux at the same time. But it's going to be comfortable enough for people to make it feel like they're on Windows for simple things like browsers and that sort of thing. Now, in terms of the file and stuff, it'll probably be like a Linux file system, which could alienate some people. So this is probably what they probably don't say, but they might make it looks like a Windows PC. And if you've ever used a Linux PC, the file system is slightly different to how it works on the Windows system. So there are things to learn about in that sort of thing. But if you're just concerned about playing games, you should be okay with just having SteamOS. When it comes down to fiddly things like dealing with files, you're going to have to learn some stuff. Okay, let's go back to the article. If you have any questions about that, just put them in the chat. Okay, it isn't an emulator either. That's an important thing to remember. These games are running through the Proton compatibility layer.
Shape and colors.
Okay.
Colors, and you make always lazy.
Okay. These games are running through the Proton compatibility layer, which translate APIs from Windows, for example DirectX, into something that Linux can understand, such as Vulkan. Proton is open source and at its heart contains a fork of Wine. Wine is not an emulator, which is a compatibility layer for running Windows software on Linux. If you want to run like Epic Game Store, if you want to run Windows Game Store, I think you have to run some sort of Wine compatibility layer on top and then go into your Xbox games. I haven't tested this, I don't know, but essentially they say that down in this article later that this is how you get Epic Game Store to run on your SteamOS. Let's go to some of this chat for a second. Okay. Trojan ARC, do you think Sony would get back to handhelds and revive PSPs? I don't think they are. I feel like with the end of Vita, they realized that wasn't really for them. So they don't really want to compete with mobiles. That's the problem. And they don't want to divert their business model into two separate divisions again. So they don't want to have like one for the console experience and then one for the portable experience or the Vita experience, because they found that they were segmenting their audience base. So some people were going to play the handheld and some people were playing the console. Now they're trying to force everyone to play the same thing. And all of this is really because all that matters right now is like how big your audience or audience base is. And this is why also the Switch exists, because they're combining their handhelds and consoles. PlayStation was also doing the same thing. They just want to have one ecosystem, which is why Microsoft never wanted to do a portable system, and it's too late for them to do it now. I think Steam is doing this to drive people to their store, to make another way that people can get to their store first. And they have to control the hardware to do this. And they didn't know how to compete with actual PCs. Unless they made, which actually, you know, the thing is, like, when they had their Steam machines, I thought they should have just made a single Steam machine, or at least one that they would upgrade every year. And this would be the Steam machine where it's very easy for people to use. And then they would have some sort of like, it would play things at like 1080p medium, for example. And then that way, every year they would come up with a new model, kind of like the iPad model, and then they would update that every year. And I thought they should have done that rather than like let all of these manufacturers like Asus or Gigabyte to make their own Steam machines, because that really bombed hard. And I think that was kind of like a philosophical concept or idea that they had, because they were in the PC space, that everybody should have customizable hardware or people should have choice. So that was a very philosophical thing that they brought to this, but it didn't actually work, because the way consoles work is to have one system. And that's what they should have done with the Steam machine. At least that's my opinion. However, with this thing, I think they can get behind this a little bit more, because with a portable system, it makes sense to have like one portable system. So I think that's why they're doing it there and not actually Steam PCs or making their own Steam PC. Because I think there'll still be people that be like, well, why don't I just make my own PC anyway? If I'm going to pay $1,000 for it, I may as well just customize it to however I want. So I'm not going to buy this Steam PC. The only way they could have done it was if they, what's the word? Sold it cheaper than it would actually cost. So they subsidized it. Okay, so this is really more like a portable gaming PC. Yep. Mike Jacoby says, definitely a good strategy to not ship this thing with Windows. If it takes off, devs will target Linux natively. Proton is good enough to give this a chance, but probably not a long-term solution. Yeah. But so with something like an installed base, it's going to be a while. And I think Steam knew that they couldn't have Linux compete with Windows anytime soon. So that's kind of why they dropped off the SteamOS and Steam Machines thing, because they knew that Linux couldn't compete with Windows. And that's the thing with developers. They just flock to the biggest audience that they can find, which is why we have PlayStation and why Vita bombed. So they just want one system that they want to develop for. Okay, if you have like a PlayStation and Xbox, then yeah, sure. Okay, they'll make two. But they don't want to like deal with Linux and Windows, where Windows is like 99% of the install base, Linux is like 1%, and they don't want to have to develop for that or spend time with that. So, sure, yeah, it's a good strategy, but I don't think it's going to. It's there's too many people on Windows essentially. And I don't think this is going to affect whether they develop on Linux or Windows or not. They're still going to develop for Windows, and that's going to be like that for the foreseeable future. Okay, so I'll go back to the article now. Valve has an official whitelist of games it supports with Proton, but you can enable it for any game in your Steam library and take it for a spin. It might work, it might not, but Proton has come a long way, and for most games that work well, you would never know you weren't playing on Windows. Better still, you're not limited to a single version of Proton. Older versions can stick around because sometimes newer builds break certain games and features. There are even custom versions of Proton. This is Linux after all. Okay, so I wasn't aware because I don't play with SteamOS. So I don't know like what games work or don't work. It feels like you can play it with any game, but there is like this bit of precaution that it may not work. And that's the thing with these gaming handhelds. Sometimes they just may not work. I know with my GPD Win 2, I was on the Intel UHD graphics or whatever it was called back then. And some things just don't work. Like games that developed in this time period of, I think it was like 2010 and 2014, worked fine. But then anything before 2010, it didn't know what was going on. It didn't work on the Intel graphics. So I'm not saying that this is going to happen with this Steam Deck, but I'm just saying there's a little bit more complication, especially when you're on a system that it has a very low install base. So you may not get your issue solved as easily as if you buy an RTX card or an AMD card, because there's a larger install base on those graphics cards. Then if the latest game comes out, most likely you're going to get a fix pretty soon. And, it's kind of like, say, Near Automata. I don't know if you guys played that, but it was like the game had problems, the developer didn't fix them, and then you're left with a broken game. Whereas the PS4 version was fine, but they didn't want to fix the PC version. So now imagine that in terms of, say, like the Steam Deck, where you have a low install base. So it is a little bit like that. Okay, so here it says, ignoring the hardware limitations of the Steam Deck, there's not a huge amount of games you won't be able to play, or rather, games that you won't be able to try and play. Proton can work miracles, but there are things it can't do. For example, using Proton, you can play Control on Steam at high frame rates and high graphics settings with a controller or keyboard and mouse. Exactly as if you were playing on Windows. There will be a small performance hit, but if your hardware is good enough, you won't know. But you can't play Destiny 2. Not because Proton isn't up to it, but because Destiny 2 has anti-cheat software, and right now, anti-cheat is the bane of the Linux gamer. The same goes for titles like PUBG and Apex Legends. You just can't get them working because the anti-cheat won't operate properly on Linux. Hopefully, the Steam Deck and Valve's continued push with Linux might give the developers a prod, but we'll believe it when it happens. And so you have this issue where Linux install base just isn't big enough for these developers to, put time and effort into it to get something fixed as soon as you would like it for Windows. So it's almost like, hey, I've got this GPD Win or Neo or Steam Deck, but it's getting fixed straight away for the PC. So of course, most people are just going to go, okay, well, I'm just going to play it on PC because I can play it and it's fixed and it's the latest version, blah, blah, blah. So that's something to think about as well. So sometimes because it's a low install base, you're not going to get things fixed, or there may be more problems that you'd have to deal with, say for something like a Nintendo Switch or like a PS Vita, for example. You're kind of like on your own a little bit. You're going to have to go through the forums and things to, ask people, hey, is this going to work before you buy the game? And that's probably something that people aren't familiar with, right? Like you buy a Switch game, it's going to work. But sometimes you might buy a game or an obscure game on Steam. Like it might be a game that's 10 years old. And then you're going to wonder, well, is this going to work on Steam Deck? And maybe it won't. And you wouldn't know because nobody's tried it on the Steam Deck and nobody has a Steam Deck and tried that game. Also, if you feel like that's fear-mongering, it is a little bit, okay? I'm not, because I don't actually have this. I haven't tried it. I don't know. I'm just telling you what my experiences were previously with something that is a little bit low powered. Okay, so it says here, it's still not cut and dry though, even when turning on Proton for all games. Fortunately, the Linux gaming crowd are a committed bunch and there's a community database that will be extremely valuable to Steam Deck owners. ProtonDB crowdsources performance results from across the whole Linux community, detailing experiences with different versions of Proton on different hardware, different distros, and even any special tricks that can be used to make a game perform better. There's a lot we don't know about the Steam Deck experience, but it's also not necessarily going to mean a lot of tweaking. Valve should do a lot of work for us, but even if it doesn't, there are tools out there already that can help. Okay, so like I said just a second ago, can you get support for really old games? Excuse me. Can you get support for really old games that are like 15 years old? It's hard to say. Whereas there's more of a chance it's going to run properly on a regular PC. So there'll be that type of dynamic that you might feel when you buy this game. But it should be really good. It's going to be fine for like 80% of the experiences. I'm just throwing a random number out there, but it should be fine. But it's nice to keep expectations in check. Obviously, the big play with Steam Deck is the Steam ecosystem, and truth be told, while Steam may not necessarily be the best example of what Linux usually stands for, Valve deserves every credit for its continued commitment to the platform. After all, Steam Deck has just been announced, but the Linux-based goodness has been getting better for years. So I really don't know that much about the Linux gaming, so that's not what I'm familiar with. So if they say that they've been putting out lots of support for that. I guess that's good news for people who are interested in buying the Steam Deck. Okay, so I'll probably... okay, so I think this is important. Okay, so it says here, but what about playing other PC games on the Steam Deck, such as those from Epic Games or Good Old Games? It's possible Good Old Games does sell some Linux native games, but Epic Games does not. Nevertheless, where there's a will, there's a way. On Linux, there are a few tools already well established that allow Windows games from outside of Steam to play. Wine is the driving force behind everything, but there is also Lutris, a popular game manager, and more recently the cross-platform Epic Games tools Legendary and Heroic Games Launcher. So that's pretty cool. If you want to get this and also play Epic Games and Good Old Games, it doesn't mention Windows Game Store, but you will be able to do that. There may be some complications, but there seems like at least there's a way rather than it absolutely being cut and dry, like, no, you can't. Since Steam Deck is just a PC running Linux, there's no conceivable reason you couldn't install any of these tools and install games from Good Old Games and Epic Games, even Origin, Ubisoft Connect, or Battle.net. These can be installed on Linux using Lutris. Okay, you can even run Windows on a Steam Deck. Of course, you could also just bin SteamOS entirely and install Windows. Without a keyboard is not necessarily going to be the best handheld experience, but if you wanted to do this, you certainly can. It's worth noting that Valve says you can connect any accessory to it as long as it's USB or Bluetooth enabled, so it's possible you can connect a keyboard and mouse to it. Okay. If you want to install Windows, just get the deck. Oh my gosh. Get the dock. Plug in your keyboard and mouse, install your Windows, get everything set up, and then run Windows after that. There'll be a button that you can push to get the on-screen keyboard up whenever you need it. So I don't think it's that big of an issue. And most of the time, you're going to be playing games, especially playing games. The reason why you want to get this is to play portable games with the two controls, thumbsticks. You may find that a game like Civilization, you might enjoy better with a keyboard and mouse. You may find other games that you enjoy better with keyboard and mouse. But I think for most games where you want to play with control sticks, you're not going to need the keyboard, is what I'm trying to say. So I think no keyboard is fine. You don't have a keyboard for Switch, you don't have a keyboard for Vita, and you're just playing games, it's fine. Valve recommends not wiping SteamOS or Windows, but designer Lawrence Yang told IGN that it was possible. The optional dock, which has been announced but has no release date yet, can also help you connect the Steam Deck to a monitor or other peripheral. I'm not going to read his quote because he basically said it in the IGN video, but he basically says, yeah, you can just install Windows if you don't like SteamOS. There's cloud gaming on this, although if you have such strong hardware with 1.6 teraflops, I don't think you really need it. I guess if you want to play AAA games like a Cyberpunk 2077, if you want to play Cyberpunk 2077, then maybe you want to just like hook it up to your Steam streaming, and you could play it that way. I think that's a good way to do it. So you could technically get that 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage console anyway. Valve could officially partner with any of these services and integrate them into Steam Deck, but even if they don't, it's a Linux PC, it'll handle Chromium-based web browser. Microsoft Edge is even on Linux these days. The major cloud gaming platforms are all available as web apps through Chromium browsers, so there's no reason not to believe that you can enjoy them on the Steam Deck. Using Steam's built-in controller could be a sticky point, but Steam supports just about every controller you can think of, so you'd always have an alternative option. And even though it's not cloud gaming, Steam Remote Play will definitely be a part of Steam Deck. If you have Windows-powered gaming PC on the same network, you'll be able to stream any Steam game to it. Okay, so I think that's about all I wanted to say there. I think that's it. That's going to be ads and stuff. So we'll just get to these final comments in the chat, and then I'm going to go because we're running at 3 hours for this Steam handheld thing, and nobody's going to watch this later on, but that's fine. I had a really good time with you guys. Had 18 people, concurrent viewers, which is the best I've ever done. So thank you for joining me in this Steam handheld chat live stream today. It says here, feeling a bit pessimistic after seeing this. I don't see much crossover with console gamers. Most adopters will be PC users only, so the deck will be a niche group within a niche group. Yeah, this is the type of thing that this niche group has been calling out for ages. I mean, we've had the GPD Win, 1, 2, 3, A and Neo, been around for 5 years, 6 years, that people have been wanting something like this. So I think these people are really excited. If you're somebody who's curious, then maybe you just sit out for a bit. Although I will say that this is going to just sell out. So you have to go in understanding that this is a niche thing. No question. If you're worried about support and that sort of thing, most of the niche people aren't too fussed because they already know they're a niche anyways. But yeah, if you're somebody who's, you know, normally games on PC, curious, you probably want to sit out for a little bit until you see like how this thing goes. Yo, just how much RAM we're running. So we're running 16 gigabytes of LP DDR5, 5500 memory. So confirmed SK says, yeah, it's starting to feel that way, Stephen. They need big picture mode as a default. I think it more or less is. There's this SteamOS thing that you saw back there. Should be the first. So it's running that. That looks great, I think. That looks fantastic. That's something like big picture. So I'd be happy with that. Mike Jacoby says, should be great for emulating even up to the Switch possibly. Yeah, it could very well emulate Switch. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I got a lot of noise in the background, so I got to go. But thank you so much. I don't want to really leave 18 people, but I really had a good time talking about the Steam. I know I tend to ramble a lot for my live streams, but sometimes it's very unscripted. So I kind of just go all over the place. The chat is going, got stuff that I want to present, lots of things everywhere. So it is what it is. I'll try and get like a better format sometime soon. But yeah, awesome time chatting Steam Deck with you guys today. And remember, guys, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I know you guys... most of you guys probably subscribed anyway. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for joining me again. See you guys.